Listen
Eventually,
here. Don't make fun
eventually
of
you
me and
will
my
edit
countdown.
that. Oh, it got
Eventually,
me playing on
yes.
that. Eventually, you'll edit that and actually put yourself in a long fade out or a countdown or something to help you not have to like. Now.
Hold, hold.
What? Did we just become best friends? Yep.
Hey, Blizzrad, thank you for renewing your sub for another
Oh
18
boy.
months. We didn't just become best friends. No, we've been best friends all along. The friendship is the best ship. Hey, Aether Drift, good to see you. Thanks for coming and hanging out. Let's see, I saw Danger Hobo in chat as well. Good to see you guys. 07. All right, cool. Yeah, the everything audio wise looks like it's coming through. Everything sound equal between Naz and I.
So say we all.
Listen, Captain Adama, you need to just chill. Oh, fuck. I almost forgot. I'll be right back, and then we'll do our Pathfinders intro. One sec.
Oh, okay. Happy about something. Why does it look weird? Oh, it's dark over there. You know, that's terrible. Yeah, that's way too much light. Wow. That's the sun! Back from the moon! Oh, there. Shows off my nice pasty white complexion. Oh boy, how's everyone doing?
Okay.
Actually,
Cool.
it's interesting that like it color corrects back to like a normal tone went through Twitch.
All right. Welcome, everyone, to episode 68 of the Pathfinders podcast. We are the Pathfinders. I'm Tree0311 here with my partner in crime.
Oh, are we skipping the next one? Oh, hi everyone, I'm Naz.
And we're the Pathfinders, and here on the show, we are charting the way through all the nebulous information surrounding Star Citizen Squadron
It would have been way
42
too well.
and their development.
It would have been way too good if we got to the next number in April 1st.
Oh, yeah. I didn't time that very well.
Wait, lined up way too well.
But yeah, I said nebulous, so everybody drink.
I have coffee, so that's all I got.
Oh. And I have beer.
Ruffles is in chat. Hello, Ruffles.
Hey, Ruffle Skin. Or Ruffle Skin?
Yeah, there you go.
Oh. I don't know what that means. Do you know Ruffles from your org or?
So he was longtime viewer and friend of someone else I stream with, which I was completing Wildlands with. You had mentioned Wildlands earlier.
You stream with someone else.
I do.
You
I'm a terrible cheater. And then Ruffles was interested in Star Citizen, so we indoctrinated him into Star Citizen, and he instantly joined the org.
Homewrecker. Ruffle Skin's a homewrecker.
One man's homewrecker is another man's homemaker. See.
Hey, North End Trooper, good to see you. 07. Hope you're doing well.
You stream Wildlands? Yeah, we actually just finished it this last week. This week we're going to be doing a lore run through. Actually, this Friday we'll be doing a lore run through on Future Soldier. Basically watching a 2-hour video, getting the lore download of all the gameplay things and all the quotes from the game, and then next week we're going to start at Breakpoint.
Cool.
And then hopefully it won't take us too long, but we are planning to go slow because apparently next year they're coming out with a sequel to Breakpoint. So, and while this was my first time through a Ghost Recon game, so
Okay.
it's going awfully fast. I need to go back through Wildlands.
There was an open world team-based survival shooter that was not zombies that I thought that was one of the major IPs like Wildland or like Ghost Recon and other things similar. And I don't remember which one it was that was in development. It's supposed to be coming out soon, and like people were likening it to oh gosh.
And it's not Chernobyl?
No.
Or Stalker?
No, it was
Team.
it was like a set in sort of like a post World War III, America's been invaded type setting. Um, gosh dang it! Every
Not
time I have a
Wolfenstein?
stroke. Nope. Nope. Um, I don't know. It'll come to me midway through the podcast, and then we won't know why I was thinking
just
about
get just get like railroaded into like, oh, that's the
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah. So the thing that I had to
Wasn't
run
that a
out
90s
for.
movie we can't use the coming out with a sequel to it?
Oh
Are you an actor
yeah.
now, Naz? I've always been an actor.
Yeah. No, it's not Breakpoint. It's Oh gosh. Point Break. Point.
Point
Not
Break is
Breakpoint.
the
It's Point Break.
movie.
Yeah. Yep. So the thing I had to run out of the room for to go get is
What alcohol you got?
I went to the store and I got stuff to make dinner earlier after my run, and I found this, and I can't remember if I've ever drank it before on stream, but I found Cosmic Creatures.
That looks
Cosmic
oh, it's
Creatures
beer.
IPA.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what I had to go get. And the other thing I have to show off is that I'm very excited about and proud of before we get into the show, and it's right around the corner here.
I still can't believe that we're getting the weird bats and oh my.
Look what I finished
Very
building the other
nice.
night.
Nice.
Lego Tantive 4. It's up on my new
Is that thing you're
shelves.
holding it by like a specific peg to hold it by? Because that is
Yep.
Lego does not hold that hard.
All the big Lego, not all, like most of the big Lego ships have one of these, the play handle, I guess.
That's not the hammerhead. Aether. That's just the Corvette. Just the normal Carillion Corvette. The hammerhead has the long, the tall neck on it, or the tall head on it. The hammerhead in game has the wide, flat one. Polaris. Yeah, no, actually, it is much closer to the Polaris, but it has a completely. There are completely different philosophies into the ship design.
I do love that ship. That's why I had to have it. It's not
What happened
sold.
to your mic?
What happened to my mic?
Oh, I don't know what you did when you started talking, but it sounded like you were talking through a pillow.
Oh, is it
And then
good?
you turned.
Is it okay
I
now?
guess you like, yeah, you like
Okay.
turned towards your mic or something, and it fixed.
I need to
It's really
probably
weird.
adjust that, turn it a little bit better. So yeah, I finally finished building that. That has literally been in the box for almost 2 years.
Oh my! Well
And-
done.
Yeah, and there's another one that I.
command section is vertical. No, yes.
Yep, and there's another. I've got the Lego fire station from Lego City. It's up there that I have to finish building, and I have to make some repairs from the move of the Lego hospital that I have, and get the ambulance and the helicopter up on it. But
So
yeah,
at one
I'm
point, actually,
very pleased with my bookshelves now.
Nice. Actually, I was when I was younger, gotten the Lego police station, and I, even at that young age, was disappointed in the architecture because they made so many concessions to one, keep the price down, to make it like a dollhouse kind of like playable. So there was no back to it, and I'm like, we had already like playing Lego ourselves within the family had found a system to make each layer of a building accessible. You'd build the walls up, and then that last layer, you'd put the smooth brick with just a couple of studs facing, so you could still lock in the next floor, but it was easily removable. And I was so disappointed to get this multi-tail police station, which I've been playing which I've already played SimCity and stuff like that. So like the police stations were like one of the biggest buildings. We got this police station, like it's missing half the building.
This isn't structurally sound at all.
Exactly. So like it was
How
like,
did-
wow, this is the
How do they
biggest
heat this
I
building?
own.
Yeah. Okay.
It's just-
Tangent, but yeah, I had to show that off. Had to show off the beer. So you're gonna be playing or getting into the next Ghost Recon starting Friday. Tomorrow night, I'm hoping to do some co-op gameplay. I've been wanting to do a group. Oh gosh, I just stroked out again.
Probably somewhere in your Discord.
Dang it, Project Zomboid. I've been wanting to do a Project Zomboid, with a group thing, because like I like survival games, I like zombie games, there's zombocalypse games. I don't like playing them solo. If something is going, potentially going to eat me, I don't want to not have somebody watching my back, and trying to
Or
do
to
the
sit there and laugh
survival
at you.
thing. Yeah, exactly. If something horrible befalls me, I want somebody else to see it and laugh. But the other thing is, like, I don't like survival games by myself, because then you're doing everything. It's so much better if you're working together with someone. Be like, okay, I'm going to go find this and I'll make these. If you can go over here and get those, and then we'll come back together, and then we'll finally have a shovel.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's about Zomboid. Yep.
Or like picking out where do you want your little base to be, where what how are we going to set up defenses for it, where do we go today to scavenge for supplies. Like, it's so much better with other people, and so I've had it for ages and I've barely touched it, and so I'm going to try and round up as many people as I can to play Project Zomboid tomorrow night, and sort of continue it as a group over the next several weeks while we wait for 323 to release. I've heard so many great things from it. I've watched a bunch of people play it, and I bought it like when it first went into early access, and I just never got into it because it's it's my kind of gameplay if I've got someone to play with. Whereas, certain other games I'll play by myself that are, co-op games that are fine to play. But any sort of survival game, I want to play with other people. Any sort of something's going to eat me game, come out from the shadows behind me and eat me, I want to play with other people. Because my ticker just can't take the idea of zombie, lurching out from the doorway that I just passed behind me and taking a bite out of my neck because I'm by myself, But yeah. So that's my plan for tomorrow night. And then I'm hoping on Saturday, and I was going to ask you if you're going to be available. I've been doing Project Overdrive every Friday with the group because I've had Fridays off. Well, this Friday I have drill. And so I'm going to try and do it either Friday night or Saturday night, get a group together to do this next phase, whatever that ends up being. So I'll post that up, and we'll see how many people we can round up. But if you're available, or any of your org mates are available, it's the more the merrier. We've been having a lot of fun. So
All right, yeah, I'll see what I can do. I should be able to do Saturday. I don't know of anything else at the moment. Oh, yes, I do. I will be out of town. I'll be at a Bar Citizen.
oh, cool, lots of fun. Somewhere in
Raleigh.
Where is it at? Raleigh. Very
Raleigh.
fun. Take pictures. Have a great time. Is it? Do you know if any CIG are going to be in attendance? Is it that big or no?
No, we're not big. We're not big enough yet. We're like less than 5 short on normal. Like on good days, we're less than 5 short.
Cool.
It's ridiculous. So close. And I only started going to Bar Citizens after CitizenCon. Come to find out, the guy who leads most of our Bar Citizens is Chrome, the guy who did the soccer ball thing at CitizenCon with Jared.
The
Apparently that was
the
just
gown.
such a pain to actually get together. Like there's so much miscommunication because it was a spur of the moment thing, but it was like 5 spur of the moment things in a chain. Because he already showed up he already had the medical gown cosplay ready to go, and then Jared had saw him the day before, so he's like, I need you to bring that. I need tomorrow. And so Chrome shows up not wearing it. He's like, well, no, I need you to go wear that. And he actually left it back at the hotel, so he had to go run back across the street to the hotel, change into the medical gown, run back to the convention center. And then they had to find the soccer ball, and then they were sitting there for like 10 minutes waiting for the part to end because they were running overtime on stage. Just sitting there waiting for the camera to switch over, and they're just sitting there.
Yeah, I remember seeing him walking around the venue, and like I took a picture because I think there's more than one person that was dressed up like that. But yeah, it was really funny.
That's funny.
So let's get into
Oh,
the
boy.
show. So tonight we've got, it feels good because we're actually looking at more like deep dive kind of content that we haven't really gotten to do very much of recently, just because schedules and busy and stuff. But it's been a lot of roadmap roundups and monthly reports and not much else for us. But tonight we're checking out the April 3rd roadmap roundup, which was last Wednesday, so a week ago, or not
We
quite
are
a week
on
ago.
schedule.
Yeah, we are caught up. We are good content creators, and we're also going to do a Spectrum Pulse, and we're just calling it modular. Ship Modularity review. There's no clever name for it, but because of what was on the roadmap roundup, we thought it'd be really good to take a look at the Aegis Retaliator Gold Standard work that we had seen previously. We'll refresh that, as well as what we know about the tech blockers, or the most recent tech blocker for modularity that has since been overcome. We'll take a look at a list of modular or potentially modular ships that we came up with. As well as a few little important tidbits and pieces of information surrounding modularity and how it's potentially player facing, that we thought that would be good to share with everybody to, here's the information, take, do with it what you will, manage your own expectations. This is what we think, that sort of thing. And then I wanted to cover, as part of a scanner anomaly, if you remember last fall, Benoit, the now chief technology officer for CIG, responded in a post saying that the development of the quantum simulation was on hold, and gave sort of vague descriptions of why that is. And so we're going to look at a few other links and bits of information to sort of explain what those things might be and why, in order to set expectations for when when the quantum simulations development might return, and why it was really put on hold in the first place. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. So let's go ahead and switch screens, and we'll launch right into the April 3rd roadmap roundup. Oh, and remove bookmark bar. Bingo. All right, Naz, if you will do your thing.
All right, as we are to do when we read documents from CIG directly, we like to read the headers because it denotes what exactly the purpose of said document is. So, with the roundup, this is the standard opener, and it says, "Happy Wednesday, everyone! Every 2 weeks, we accompany the roadmap update with a brief explanatory note to give you insight into the decision-making that led to any changes. This is part of an effort to make our communications more transparent, more specific, and more insightful for all of you who helped make Star Citizen and Squadron 42 possible. With that said, let's go ahead and dive into this week's Roadmap Roundup. The community team, CIG community team."
Sorry, I'm adjusting my camera real quick. Let's see. Ooh, nope. Sorry, that was bothering me, so I have to fix it. My OCD was like, what is wrong here?
Do it live.
There we go. That looks better. I looked really short. My head was like halfway up the frame, so. So, notable changes, and I'll talk. I'll go over this first bit for the release view, and then for 323, and then Naz, if you'll go over the 323.x bit.
Yep.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry, I'm talking to my wife. She was handing me the Beatty monitor. But yes, thank you, Nazeris, for being here and being a part of the team. So Notable changes for April 3rd, 2024. Release view. The following features have been added to the release view, targeting a 3.23.0 release. So that's the important bit right there. And the first is Fauna Copion. Populating the persistent universe with the Copion, an aggressive, agile animal that travels in packs. You'll find them in a variety of areas, from grassy fields to lurking in the darkness of caves. Hey, Myark07, good to see you. Thanks for joining us this evening. Hope you're doing well.
Is the naming a play on copium?
That would actually be really funny. Like, okay, so you know how so we're going to get into that, but there's creature hunting.
Yeah.
But down at the bottom, kill and retrieve valuable parts. What if you like have to like retrieve the copium sack from the copium in
If it
order
was
to
even
maintain
just like
the
the
supply?
blood of the copium beast, like
Mm-hmm.
it still works the same way, like some venom of the copium beast or whatever.
Yeah.
Hilarious.
Yeah, it can infect backers without warning, and
Also, just the hunting copium,
Mhm.
you know. It's hilarious.
There we go. That looks better. Sorry, I'm OCDing on my camera.
Yes, you are.
But yeah, so they kind of remind me of jackals, right?
That makes sense. Yeah, I can
Yeah.
see that.
Jackals, but they've got like horn-looking things.
Do they have horns?
Here, let's.
You
I'm
didn't
gonna pull up
post the video in the window, did you?
Citizen Copion, and I want the. Oh, I should have pulled up
There you go.
that post. Is that what that is?
I just sent it to you.
Bingo.
I cannot believe after all of the teasing of the stupid Kazi Grazers, we're not getting the Kazi Grazer.
Yeah, first.
I'm-
I think it's probably due to like they want Kazi grazers to like come with ranching or farming or outposts or something. Yeah, I don't know if they're gonna put those out in the wild, but
We've seen them in the wild so many times.
so here's the.
I think these are just the betas, the beta animals.
Mm-hmm.
Get the another one.
See, it has a horn on the nose.
Yeah.
That's the noise I make in the morning before I've had my coffee. So, just like I refuse to call Twitter X, in my house it will always be Twitter. I'm not going to call the bird things the Maroc. It is the Turbo Pelican. It will always be the Turbo Pelican, and if you call it the Maroc in my house, I'm going to correct you. So, but yeah, I saw people calling it the Turbo Pelican and the Turbodactyl, and I'm like, I don't know which I like better, but I'm just gonna roll with the Turbo Pelican. So yeah,
Great.
but it's
all the years of hard work on the lore team naming all this crap. What is that? That's the dropship. It's called the Valkyrie. What is that? That's the gunship. It's a constellation. What is that? That's the Turbo Pelican. It's a murder. All the years of schooling that they had to do, all the years of writing fantastic stories and lore, all of their names out the window.
It looks like a pelican, and because it's like a in space, we're gonna put turbo in front of it, and
No, it's the Star Pelican. Star
so
Pelican and Star Puppy.
If you follow the leaks, they did have the animal description that's in game in there, and they talked about where you'll find it for the Copion and the Maroc, but they're like basically all over, and so it makes me wonder if they are giving them free range right now and basically saying they're all over the planet, until there's more creatures, and then when they add more creatures, if they'll like restrict what biomes they're in.
I wonder if Planet VTech 4 or 5, Planet VTech 5, as they've mentioned in the monthly reports, I think just this last one, that they want to do a lot more with ecosystem. I wonder if they're going to be adding a system for animal-specific support for ecosystems, and specifically pecking order ecosystems. So you can actually have animals fighting animals and actually having a sustainable ecosystem as far as fauna goes.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's like how they get distributed. Like, will they put in, tags on the different creatures that say what sort of biomes or weather conditions they're in, and then the procedural system will say, okay, they're distributed here, here, and here, and then they really don't go out of these areas. We in Walker 300, we haven't gotten the lore on these. They just got added to the roadmap, and so we don't have the lore for them. I imagine that's going to come with 323 to tell us more about where they came from. But
Which,
correct me if I'm wrong, but they're on both Microtech and Hurston.
Yes, because it says you'll find them in grassy fields and lurking in dark caves. So grassy fields is the only place we have grassy fields is Microtech. But we also saw them on Hurston in the Twitter clip, so it makes sense that they'd be in a lot of places. So I'd like to remind everyone that
what's the Marak going to look like when it's T-posed with its wings out?
Oh my god! That they already confirmed that 323.0 is going to be out previous to obviously Invictus launch week, which means they only have technically 4 weeks to go. Which means I assume pretty soon this week, next week, we're getting Wave 1. And we can actually start working on that. So around that time, we'll be getting the lore ups for all these things. So far, I have not seen them add distribution centers to the version yet. I've been keeping up with the Evocati patch notes, and I have not seen that go in. So we still might have a few casualties of patch. Keeping that in mind. But you want to finish out that so we can talk about 323X?
Yeah. So Fauna Marak, populating the persistent universe with the Marak, a passive flying bird-like creature. Maraks live in flocks and are often found near lush green environments. The other thing that I don't remember where I saw it, but I read that the Marak is part of is the first of the Boids, and so the Marak is handled differently than the Copion. In terms,
so it's a test for both systems.
Yeah, exactly. It's the initial of creatures and the initial for Boids, essentially. And then new missions, creature hunting. New missions that require players to locate, kill, and retrieve valuable parts of creatures roaming the environment. As much as I think these are going to be, fun, probably probably going to get old pretty quickly. I'm looking forward to when we can capture them. Like I want to capture it and put it in a cage and sell them, or how do I tame a Copion so it'll protect my ship, or how do I tame a Marak so it'll ride on my shoulder like a parrot or something,
It'd be great way to do that is actually having to take it to like a tamer, so you have to capture it in like a specific cage or at some type of containment device. And then have to take it to tamers, and the best tamer in the game should be a Banu. So you have to capture whatever you're trying to tame, and then take it to tamers, and different tamer NPCs would have different levels of skill, and the best one in the game is a Banu. So you have to take it over to Banu space and say, "Hey, I need you to tame this whatever animal," and then you kind of hand it over to him and wait whatever timer it is, and you have to go pick up your animal now that actually follows commands and things.
That'd be cool. Let it bite him instead of me.
BMM's gonna be a zoo.
There's poop
most zoos
everywhere.
Don't. Gotta get them shovels in game.
Yeah.
Oh boy. All right. So moving on to 323X, which otherwise known as 323.1. They're not fooling anyone. Also known as the Invictus Launch Week patch. Vehicle modularity. This is not confirmed. This is just hypothesis tinfoil hats on, obviously. But I'm pretty sure 323X and these two things are coming with Invictus, and there'll all be a big show of Invictus stuff.
Yeah,
get there.
Invictus is always a .x patch of the
Yep.
of the Q1 patch. It always is.
Right, so vehicle modularity, implementing the ability to swap modular sections of certain vehicles to change their function. This initial release contains the torpedo and cargo room for the modules, torpedo and cargo room modules for the Aegis Retaliator, with additional modules and vehicles to be added in the future. Wow, I cannot read that sentence apparently. So we'll be talking about all of that, vehicle modularity, what ships, what modules, in the next section. So stay tuned for that. And we also have the Aegis Retaliator Gold Standard being updated in this patch as well, updating the Aegis Retaliator to Gold Standard, including the introduction of modular rooms. The torpedo and cargo rooms will be available in the initial release, with more to come in the future. And then
Yeah, so basically they're introducing the Retaliator base alongside the Retaliator bomber, but they're giving you the ability to swap between the two and configure around a little bit. So it'll also be interesting to me with the changes to cargo, because I forget what the number was. I want to say it was like 48 or 64 or something like that. But what the SCU was for the Retaliator with the cargo modules before, and if that has held true, if it's changed, what that ends up.
I hope they're
like.
elevators. I really hope they're elevators.
Yeah, I agree. That would make
Like, there's no way to like having to ferry one SCU or at most two SCUs up those skinny little elevators. I hope they're drop elevators. Anyway, to
it
finish
could make
off,
for pretty quick loading and unloading too.
yeah. No progress tracker this week, as what continues on long-term planning for future insights into the planning efforts. Our production team, we invite you to the last letter of the chairman. And in that letter for the chairman, they mentioned that the reason we're not getting the progress tracker updates is because they're actually planning out all the way and confirming the entire roadmap all the way up to 1.0. So until that happens, we're not getting any progress tracker because everything is moving a lot. So when something like happens, like, 12, 24 months down the road on the long roadmap, it's going to have domino effects back into the roadmap or back into the schedule. So they're confirming the entire roadmap. Generally, I don't know how detailed, how.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to give us
roadmap.
dates. I think they're going to give us like phases. And
I still think we're going to have the original progress tracker, maybe with a bit of polish on it. And we'll be seeing that, and we'll, like normal, reveal the upcoming schedule. But they're trying to internally confirm the entire road to 1.0 before they start telling us, so that even less stuff comes off the progress tracker or the release views as we continue forth to 1.0.
Yeah, like I don't think they're gonna give us a 3-year release view, but I think they'll tell us like, okay, here's phase 1, and then phase 2 and phase 3. These are the things that we want to get in, on the way to 1.0. They won't give dates, they won't give patch numbers for when they're targeting for that until it is. They're going to probably continue what they've been doing with the patches, and and then just tick the things off. But
I think we'll get it before CitizenCon. I really do.
They did say that they're going to give us that roadmap later in the year, aka CitizenCon. That's what that means.
I think we'll get the road to 1.0 at CitizenCon, but the progress tracker will start being published after they've solidified the 1.0 road.
Yeah. And because what Jake said, and I don't have the link up, but he did say in one of the comments for the Spectrum post of the roadmap, he did say that they were looking at a more near-term update to the progress tracker once near-term plans are more solidified. So basically, to me, what that means.
Finally get the progress tracker removed. What do you mean get it removed?
I think
confirmed it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, it's not going. The progress tracker isn't going anywhere. The progress tracker is a great tool if you know how to use it.
PT's not coming out. PT is never coming out. It was a demo. They canceled the game before it was ever out.
For
those who don't know, PT was a demo of a prototype of a game I believe Kojima was working on, and it didn't go anywhere, and they canceled the project. I think it was Silent Hill. I think it was a Silent Hill game, but it was a prototype, and they canceled it and stuff. PT's not coming out.
I think what
Not
we're
to another
looking
project.
at in term is like say they have the near term planning for the schedule done, in the next quarter. And so they'll be able to say, okay, for the rest of this year, we have the upstream team schedule out to the end of 2024. Because normally they give us that schedule a year in advance for the upstream teams. They show what they're scheduled for, and the downstream teams are 1 quarter. So, say if they updated it in June, we get, the progress tracker up to that point filled in, as well as the next quarter for the downstream teams, and then get the upstream teams out through the end of 2024. But the progress tracker really isn't important right now because we know what they're working on. Like,
Yeah.
we don't need to be told what each team is working on right now because they told us at CitizenCon what they're going to be doing over the next year. All those things.
And basically
they're the
everything what they're
Yeah.
doing over the next year.
Yeah, all that what they're working on from CitizenCon forward for a year is bringing Star Citizen up to feature parity with Squadron 42 and the reintegrating the feedback and everything that they get from us on those features back into Squadron 42 as part of leading up towards release. So
We have nothing on the progress tracker since
yeah,
December.
and so we don't really need an update of the progress tracker until they get past that work, because we know what things they're working on, and they tell us about what they're working on in each monthly report, and we know what's in the next patch. So and basically we can just take that list from CitizenCon, remove the stuff from it, remove 323 from that list. Okay, this is what's left. All right, that's 4.0, 4.1, and we see those things already being worked on in the monthly report. So it's like it's not super helpful information right now, but it will be helpful again once they get past that period of reintegrating everything from Squadron into the PU, to bring it up to feature parity, because they that's the thing they want to get, is they want the PU to be to have all the same features and have the same experience as Squadron, plus all the PU features on top of that. And so that's this year in a nutshell.
Yep. And to confirm, I don't know if anyone has this doubt, but even though Squadron is feature complete and is technically is about to be or is somewhere near content complete, when Star Citizen gets all the features from Squadron, it doesn't mean it's going to be at the same state, because there are features and gameplay things that the MMO Star Citizen needs that Squadron does not. And so 1.0 is going to be a little bit longer run even after we get all these Squadron features come over. So
Yep.
building interiors, that's confirmed as a 1.0. Base building's confirmed as a 1.0, not waiting to 1.0, but needs to be in for 1.0. And you can imagine a lot of like Org 2.0 systems probably there. There's probably a lot of MMO features that are in traditional MMOs, quality of life things and org things. We still don't have mission givers back yet. Those are going to be in before 1.0. Probably, though they have not said anything, I imagine, and we're going to talk about also this a little bit later, so kind of not spoilers, but anticipation for Quantum is probably a 1.0 feature.
Mm-hmm.
If not a 1.0 feature, like that will be the last hurrah of 1.0. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff they have on top of the stuff they're bringing over this year from Squadron that they need to add to Star Citizen before Star Citizen reaches even feature or content complete, as Squadron is making its way through this year.
Alrighty, so let's get started with the modularity review. So, pardon me. Not only is there modularity coming in, and this is like modularity tier 0, because it's just giving us introducing the tech to be able to swap 2 modules, and there's a separate module for the front and the rear section both torpedo and cargo. So, one has 4 torpedoes, the other one has 2. The front one has more cargo than the back one. But it's giving you the ability to swap between those modules for those 2 rooms. And it's just letting us test that tech to make sure it works. The other part that's coming in, though, is the Aegis Retaliator Gold Standard. And we haven't gotten a Gold Standard update on a ship in a while. Because they did the
Didn't we just get one
Gladius.
2 patches ago?
Well, we got the Gladius. They did the Gladius and the Saber.
Mm-hmm.
But that was it. They did those as part of like the squadron work, but I don't think there's been any other ones since then. But they did gold standard work and modularity work on the Retaliator 2 years ago, actually almost going on 3 years ago now, in order for to bring the Retaliator up to a more gold standard for squadron. And I'm sure there's been further updates since then, but also to allow for modularity within squadron. And it isn't player-facing modularity. It's allowing the devs to be able to specify what, how the Retaliator is equipped at runtime. So when the level loads, when the ship loads in, it's a Retaliator with these modules versus these modules, not you going up to a kiosk and telling it you want it to swap this way or that way. So here's the descriptions of those work or of that work in the progress tracker. You can see that it was literally 3 years ago. System support for Retaliator room OC object container swapping. System support enabling players to swap vehicle rooms and modules via VMA, and allows designers to specify vehicle setup at runtime in Squadron 42. So they got it working in Squadron for the designers. But they didn't release in the PU at that time. Around the same time, they did the Retaliator Gold Standard work, and obviously there's been more since then. But bring it up, and so they did show off some of that work here, and we're gonna watch the clips real quick to take a look at it and see what they're describing as far as what they are doing initially for that Gold Standard work. Let's see. MWalker300 says, though I'm fine with 1 or 2 star systems fully fleshed out for SE 1.0, I'm still curious what their goal number of star systems is for 1.0. 5 to 10. There was a...
Not confirmed. They've specifically been avoiding that question ever since they said 1.0.
Yeah.
They've been very specifically, even on Spectrum, devs have been on Spectrum saying, we don't know, stop asking.
Yeah.
Basically.
So what happened is in 2017, there's an interview with GameStar magazine, which is a German gaming magazine. And it was mistranslated because everyone got all up in arms saying that, Chris Roberts, and this is a Chris Roberts interview, Chris Roberts said that they're not going to do 100 star systems now. They're only going to be 5 to 10. And what Chris said and what he meant.
5 to 10 of what we have definitely equals 100 of what they announced in 2012.
Yeah. In terms of the amount of work. But what he said
Likely
and what
just be 2.
Xylo
It will be
clarified,
more than 2.
Yeah. 1.0 isn't coming out next year. 1.0 is like 2-3 years out at least. So what Xylo clarified is basically the description of what CR has reiterated multiple times since then of what 1.0 is a more polished experience that is more amenable to more marketable to more people, essentially. Not entirely feature complete, but has all the basic features and is more polished, and the core tech is part of the game. Xylo said basically that exact thing about the 5 to 10 systems comment. They want to have 5 to 10 systems in essentially for the description of what 1.0 is and their version of release. So that's what I'm setting my expectation for. I think it's not going to be 10. I think it's going to be, they're going to be shooting for 5. And I think 5 is definitely very reasonable because Pyro, Stanton, Odin, and then 2 more,
Nyx.
And yeah, Nyx obviously is probably going to be the next one.
They've done a lot of Magnus stuff.
Yeah.
They've done, obviously, Terra. I think Terra would be like a 1.0 thing. I think that's a great system to say, hey, 1.0, here's Terra. So there's Magnus, there's Terra, there's plenty of other systems. There's Vega, there's Vanduul systems they've already worked on. Obviously there's Banu stuff and there's Xi'an stuff that we're really close to. Basically, it's what gameplay do they want in the game, and I think we should well, I'd have to look at the map, but if they're trying to get a capsule of what the game is, we need a Banu system, we need a Xi'an system, we need a Vanduul system, and we need a cargo loop, like a long-range cargo loop.
Nyx
So-
isn't done. Sorry,
No,
Lobster.
Nyx is not done. It is halfway done.
All they did was concept work on the planets. And they did it in 2021. It was only a couple of weeks of just playing around with the tools to see what they could create. But it's definitely not done from a planetary tech perspective. Not at all. Like I even have those images shared. Let's see.
And then Northern Trooper says, question with ship modules now. If I buy a ship with no modules, i.e., Galaxy, it has modules. I don't. Do you mean just the base version? Will I have to wait 6 months to get any modules for that ship? Well, the Galaxy's not coming out for a little while. And it's only going to start being in production after the Polaris, which is, I imagine 4.0 will have the Polaris. So, assuming the Galaxy comes out in 6 months, I imagine the Galaxy will come out with its modules and modularity intact.
So that was the concept work that they did for planetary painting with the Planet Tech team, and I get what Jake is saying. It's not done because that work was 3 years ago. There's no way that they did that and then aren't going to touch it between then and now. With all the changes
they're
to
going to
planetary
completely
tech in the 3
rework
years.
Nyx. Nyx is going to get a complete overhaul. They're going to redo the landing zone. They're going to redo all the planets because they're also working on Planet Tech V5. So they're going to update everything that we just saw. The tech that they use to build the Levski landing zone is so out of date. They could do 10 times the quality at half the time it took them to build Levski. There's a lot more features it has to be. Like, it could be the first fully integrated with resource network. And also, we have, the Delamar is supposed to be an oblong planet. Don't know if we're going to get those. And there's a whole bunch of new tech. One of Tree's favorites, asteroid facilities.
Yep.
So that's
Heavily
another
talked
thing
about.
that they... and it's a heavy part of Nyx itself. So there's a lot of stuff that just isn't in the game and wasn't in the game 3 years ago that once they say, okay, we're done with Pyro, kick it out the door, 4.0's in our hands, Nyx is going to be a big thing then for development.
Yeah, it
before.
won't take as long as Pyro has. They won't need to drag it out because they're waiting on server meshing. But
I would imagine 6 to 12 months at the longest.
Yeah, what I just showed off was their first pass with the planetary tech painting from 3 years ago. The planets will get another pass. They're going to distribute more whatchamacallit, rock types and flora, that sort of stuff, caves and what have you. There's a lot
We're just going to get a lore
be
dump.
done.
We're going to get retcons and updates on lore to bring it in line with current gameplay expectations.
Like, I want Nyx as much as the next guy because I think Nyx is a super cool system. They did add it to the Galactopedia like a year or so ago, and it's good reading because it is a decent little update from the original Galactic Guide. But let's not kid ourselves thinking that Nyx is done because they are going to refresh what they did 3 years ago on the planets. They've got to do a lot of updating work on Levski and Delamar. So
if they can get 4.0 out this summer like they've been wanting, I can honestly see another system coming out as a gun.
It'll just depend on what they're working on.
Yep.
Because the other thing is they're not talking about it, and I don't think we're at a point anymore where if they're working on Nyx, they would hide it from us. Now, I think that they could launch into working on Nyx and get a lot done real fast. But I definitely think that it could be. I definitely think that we'll be seeing development on Nyx before the end of the year. probably before the, or around the beginning of the second half of this year. Anyway, sorry, tangent. Let's look at the gold standard work for the gold standard and the modules for the Retaliator. And remember, this is from 3 years ago, June 17th, 2021.
And speaking of ships, work has begun on revisions to the Aegis Retaliator, bringing it up to the gold standard, including changes to the internal metrics needed for successful NPC traversal, moving the docking collar, adjusting the lift dimensions, and more. Work also continues on the Aegis Redeemer gray box interior, with these looks at the room.
So
Put to add 6 to 18 months. It's been delayed for like 4 years.
Yeah. I don't think we're going to have any issues with getting 4.0 out by the end of summer. I don't think it'll be early summer, but I think, late July into August is perfectly reasonable, because they're really not even talking about working on Pyro anymore. It's really just the work on server meshing.
It's been delayed for 4 years. It was supposed to come out like 4 years ago.
Yeah, they started testing server meshing at the end of February, and there have been multiple tests, and they've gone really well. So it's like, yeah.
And now they're just trying to find like what does the tech do? They're throwing things at it, seeing what it does.
So and John Crew talked about that work on an Invictus launch or an SCL. Basically, what they had to do is they had to widen the corridors to make it so NPCs could walk up and down the corridors of the ship. They added the component bays for it. It already had some component bays, but they updated them in terms of size and added more to give it all the component hatches and such. They removed the up and down docking collars, and they put a docking collar on one side, and they made a larger lift and put that on the other side. So there's no vertical docking collar anymore. There's just a docking collar on one side and then a bigger lift than the one we have right now on the other side.
Which should serve as a beacon for other future ships and future reworks of existing ships.
Yeah, what they're going to do, because the big thing is the NPC traversal. They couldn't navigate the cramped quarters.
And what they're doing with taking out the vertical, like they've been taking out the vertical, what are they called? The docking rings since the Cutlass Black rework. Because that also had a vertical one, and they've removed it. So stuff like the Caterpillar will probably also get its vertical docking ring removed.
Doesn't the Freelancer have one too?
Terrible. Yeah, it's also in the roof. Yeah.
Yep. All right, and this is looking at that gold standard work continued, as well as some of the modules.
So the Retaliator Gold Standard is obviously a much larger task than the Gladiator Saber. Has all the same criteria of work, so looking at the cockpit, looking at the components, adding all the things, checking everything's symmetric. But because it's got an interior, then there's additional tasks added. So the same work we do for the cockpit of the pilot has to be done for the turrets. The components that you can physically take out of the ship, can you physically take them out of the ship? Do the doors need to be wider, etc.? Now you've made the doors wider, do they still fit in the ship when they open? And we also took the time to look at the central room and thought, can we improve on this? We decided to remove the top and bottom docking collars and go for a side airlock, which also helps for docking because that's just a natural walking on transition. And then because we'd lost a lift on that side, we then realised we had to make the lift on the other side slightly larger to accommodate essentially 2 lifts worth of people. So then you've now just got 1 lift on that side of the ship to get in and a docking collar on the other side to get in. Thing that the Retaliator has is the customizable room modules, and there's a cargo module front and back, a dropship module at the front. They were all brought up to current standards, so when modularity comes on as a swappable item, they are good to go. That's where we're at with the first gold standard ships. Obviously going to go through all the ships, but we are going to focus on the ones that feature heavily in Squadron 42 first, and then we will roll on to your favourite ship afterwards.
So what did we...
So we're getting the cargo module and obviously the torpedo module and the entire ship are going to be gold standard, and those two modules will be swappable. And then here's the images from there. And so I'll put that link in chat. And a reminder, if you're watching this later on YouTube or you want to see these links and these things that we have, the show notes will be in the description of the YouTube video when I get it uploaded, which won't be tomorrow, but the following day. But I think it looks really great. Like I was reminded, not this last week, but the weeks before when we're doing the Overdrive initiative of how dated the Retaliator is, because we were using it to take out those hammerheads. And so it just reminded me like how much I wanted this gold standard when they first showed it off and talked about it. And it sucks that they didn't give it to us earlier, but I think it's they brought it up to a certain standard, and now they've done a second round to bring it up to the most current standard. And so I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't get more modules. I think that the other modules probably aren't up to the newest standard yet, and those will probably be coming in a subsequent patch, because those
I would be shocked if they're in 4.0 just to have them.
Because the dropship, they just showed off the dropship module and the habitation modules, which were sold, and they showed how they brought those up to the gold standard in 2021. So bringing those up to the gold standard now wouldn't be too much work, I would assume, but it might not be ready just yet. And so maybe soon TM. Yeah. Bombay or making it so you can swap out the racks to be able to not just carry torpedoes, but carry bombs. Like I would love to use the Retaliator as a bomber that isn't
Actual
a torpedo
bomber.
Yeah. But just to show you guys what the modules look like originally, this is around the verse from 2015. So 6 years before what we just watched. We're going to look at the old modules.
Out to the UK and got some information on some of the modules they're working on for the Retaliator. We're going to be talking about the living area, the cargo module, and the dropship. Now the first image we have here to show you today is of the living module. This was done by Peter Wilkes, one of our artists in the UK. This is where the crew is going to spend a lot of their leisure time. Think of it as kind of the living room.
Yep.
Now, when we reached out to Peter to find out what it was like to
Whoop-de-doo.
build out this room, he said that one of the major challenges is that in the layout of the ship, there's not a lot of space between the room on top of it. That's why he struggled a little bit with the ceiling space. You'll notice there's kind of a dip, and he had to spend a lot of time making sure that all of the detailing fit the space appropriately, that the table was sized appropriately. The next step after this was changing some of the details to match the rest of the ship. For example, you can see this in the general aesthetic
literally
of some
just
of the detailing in the
Look at
ceiling.
those
And you
steps.
can also
How is my character going to walk up those steps? There's no way in hell.
see it in the decals and signage in the room, which were updated to make sure that they matched the rest of the ship.
No.
Overall, Peter was really excited to work on the living module for the Retaliator because he's a big fan of the ship's aesthetic, and he was really excited for the opportunity to work on it. The next image we have here is the cargo storage
Yeah, he nailed the
room.
aesthetic.
This was done by Ian Stewart, also an artist in the UK. It's a fairly simple room. In this image, we don't have any crates to show spacing, but he really enjoyed working on it because he got to flesh out a lot of the detail in the sides of the room to make it really look like a cargo space and to make it his own. The third module we have to show you guys
By the way,
today
there are elevator
is
struts
the
in there.
dropship module, and this was also worked on by Ian Stewart over in the UK. This is the room where troops gather before they're deployed out into space or out into battle. Now, one of the challenges with this module was fitting 12 troops in what is supposed to be a very tight, compact area for deployment. But we had a plan.
Yeah, I
We
imagine
spent
that's
a
going to
lot of
lessen.
time whiteboxing this room to make sure everyone fit into their appropriate spaces in a way that made sense and could still maneuver around the room. After that, we just focused on each small section until the room started to come together. And as you saw earlier with the cargo module, we also had to make some small aesthetic changes to the room to make sure it really seemed at home inside of the Retaliator. And again, you can see this in a lot of the detailing and text around the module. And Ian actually said that this was one of his favorite rooms that he's worked on so far because he felt so accomplished after it all came together. Now, of course, this is all still work in progress.
So obviously, big improvement from what they originally looked like, from what they just showed us in the gold standard work. But it'll be really interesting to see how these modules actually turn out, especially the dropship module. What that ends up looking like, how it functions, and then like tell us more about the living space module, because you do have the bunks on like the second deck, the top deck of the Retaliator. So what do the living space modules do? And so you have front and rear living space modules. Yeah, go for it.
That's actually gonna have to do with crafting and food preparation.
Maybe.
Is there any food preparation area up at the top with the beds?
No, there's nothing.
I would imagine it's a food prep area.
But it
Specifically,
both images make it look like, okay, this is just the bachelor pad ship. And you get to the point where it's like, okay, sweet, there's a couple of couches and a table and a TV and a soda dispenser, coffee maker, and here's a table for eating at, and maybe a food prep thing. But then you have all this space dedicated to living space, and the Retaliator just becomes a platform for 5 turrets. So it's like, okay, what becomes the ship's function at this point? So I imagine they probably will go back and relook at those and think about what they're going to do with them.
I
and
hope
what purpose they'll serve.
Each of the living modules are. I hope they're the exact same function. All modules of the same type are the same function. That way you can pair a living module. For those two, I would pick the front living module with the 2 couches and TV, and a back cargo module.
Yeah.
And that way you turn into kind of a bigger, kind of like a 600, like a bigger 600, kind of like that kind of thing. Where you have nice living spaces, you have beds up on the second deck, and you have a lot of cargo space. That means you can live out your ship, do some simple hauling, do some simple cargo missions, something working in 323. And you can do just basically, it's just a medium ship or large ship to CIG that has the basic features, the living out of your ship kind of features.
Ooh, vehicle cargo bay with the drop module in front, so you could put a small vehicle in the back. Really
good
with the drop, because the
the
dropship module is only the front. There's not a rear dropship module. There's only a front dropship module. So yeah, you could do a front dropship module and then cargo in the back, or like Del, like you were talking about, like if they made it so that you could equip bombs in the rear, and so you could have bombs in the back and be able to do close air support, and as well as drop troops. And of course we know the good old torpedo bays. So the interesting part about the Retaliator is they sold the cargo modules, the living modules, the torpedo bays, and the dropship module when they concepted and sold the ship. But they also talked about the future of modularity and modules for the Retaliator. And let's see if there's a date on this. This was August 7th, 2015. So there are more Retaliator modules in the pipeline. As the mechanics behind various persistent universe roles begin to take their final form, we'll be developing additional modules to support different jobs. These include cryostasis pods for your bounty hunters, which is already we have the cryostasis pods. Obviously, they don't function, but bounty hunting 2.0 or V2, the cryo pods in the Cutlass Blue, which Avenger is that has the pods?
Which one? Titan?
No, the
Stalker.
Titan. Is it the Stalker? I think it's the Stalker. That makes sense.
Yeah, Warlock has the EMP, Stalker has the pods, yeah.
There you go.
I did it.
Medical equipment, recharging stations for Titan armor, salvage equipment, and more. Stay tuned. Your ships are getting more versatile. And so they said updating the Aegis Retaliator Gold Standard, introducing the with additional modules and vehicles to be added in the future. So question is, beyond the ones that were sold, let's see, where was I? Where'd it go? Oh, here we go. Sorry, beyond the ones that were sold, what other ones potentially from this list might they be doing for the Retaliator and Modularity? And again, they would sell it standalone, of course. But they mentioned medical equipment. And then at IA 2952, the ad for the Retaliator base, not the bomber, room options include cargo, dropship, medical, and living quarter variations. Well, they never sold medical modules, but good old Sergio Ciabra did this art test 3 years ago, essentially the same time that the modules and the Retaliator were getting brought up to the gold standard. And by art test, this is what he did in order to get hired. So I'm going to drop this link in chat, but it'll also be in the show notes if you're watching later.
And at a cursory glance, from what I can piece together from Hanger Link and Inverse from Starship 42, using the cutaway whatever it is, cutaway view. There we go. Kind of assuming where the modules actually start and end. The biggest vehicle you're gonna get in that cargo bay is gonna be a Cyclone.
That'd be worth it.
So
12 troops.
Oh
in
yeah,
a Cyclone.
absolutely worth it. But
Yeah.
like, don't think you're getting like a Storm or an Ursa in there.
Yeah, an Ursa wouldn't fit, I don't think.
No, it's also way tall.
But
So
it sounds like, and unless this is just some marketing person who put this in wrong because they saw this and they thought that it was on the list, but they had originally talked about it back here. Somebody did concept art for it and it showed up on the list. And not only was it in there for IA 2952, it's still in there for 2953. So just a few months ago, it was still in the same ad. So I'm hoping that it's really a thing, because I think that this Sergio's work came out great. Obviously, this is the old arrangement because it has the top and bottom airlocks, but it's still really cool looking. It does make you wonder, because like the med beds only stick out through here.
well,
how
that's
would
not
they
going to
configure
happen.
that? Yeah.
Because this was the art test. He made the entire ship a module variant, not module.
Yeah.
He made the entire ship a variant, not modules.
Mm-hmm.
So these would be kicked into one of those modules. They would
Yeah.
not be in the main hallway because there's a component there now.
Yep. And so I mean, imagine, if we know how big
But they
the
definitely
Apollo
would do a
is.
paint. Yeah, they definitely would do a paint for this.
Yeah. If they did medical modules for the Retaliator, how many beds could you fit in there? What configurations would they do it in? How would they make that work? So
I don't think it'd go above a 2.
yeah, I like, everybody is all about the one, and I'm like, you don't want a one. Size 1 bed, a tier 1 bed is going to be a horribly inefficient thing for the majority of injuries. You're going to be able to stabilize a tier 1 injury with a tier 3 and a tier 2 bed. You're going to be healing the vast majority of injuries with a tier 2 bed and doing it in a more cost effective way. And if you can carry more tier 2 beds, you can take care of more people. But
And respawn is going to cost resources.
yeah. Socially Confused says the front 2 thrusters bug me. I like the rest of the look. Yeah, the VTOLs on the Retaliator are a bit jank, but I think they kind of they look cool in forward flight mode, but the vertical flight mode, they look weird.
I like it. I've always liked the silhouettes of the Retaliator.
Yeah. Northern Trooper says, as an example, a new module for Retaliator comes out for the Tally next year. Will we wait 6 months until that is purchasable in game? I don't know. I hate that. I hate that thing. I know they do it for a reason because people bought it with real money, so they get first access. But I think it's also a kind of crappy way to get people to buy stuff with real money instead of buying it in game, because the whole FOMO thing. But yeah, we'll see.
I mean,
Uh,
in the wider gaming community, a timed exclusive is pretty much accepted.
Yeah,
For most people, when you
it's
say,
a
"Hey, you can
standard
buy it in game,"
practice. Yeah,
well, even like most video essay, you'll see, or like that is the answer to bought exclusivity is, hey, just make it available in game, just give a time delay on it.
Mhm.
That is the way to fix stuff that you can buy out of game, so it's not pay to win. So you can pay or play to win. Which
Yeah.
is another reason why Star Citizen is not pay to win, because you can play it and get the same crap.
Yeah, I agree with Dell. I would rather they didn't do. I would really rather they didn't do that for modules. You know, once they're in game.
It's gonna be
Yeah.
really interesting. Not interesting. It's gonna be, I don't know what the word is there. I guess interesting would go there. It's gonna be interesting if they come out with a module. Are they going to make an entire new store page for a module?
Hmm.
It doesn't make sense to me anyway. Unless they're coming out with a new suite of modules and basically IAE with a, I can imagine like they can come out with a module somewhere in the middle of the year, and then around IAE, all modules will be back on sale, including the new one that was added. So you can have it added to your account instead of buying it in game. So kind of like reverse time exclusivity. So it'll be added into the game first, and then you could buy it afterwards. That'd be neat.
So we're also going to look at why we've been waiting for modularity, because this question came up. We've obviously been wanting modularity for years. The people have paid for it. It's been heavily advertised on many ships. But so this was asked at the all ships Q&A at IAE 2951, basically 6 months after all this gold standard work was done and the modularity work, and people were like, oh, we saw this on the progress tracker. Where is it? And so they're going to explain why it didn't make it into game at that time.
Let's go ahead and ask them about that. I was going to get Mark with that one. Where is player-facing modularity? We've been hearing about this thing for quite some time. And what can you tell us, if anything, about this system?
So it is still planned. Though I say this every time that people ask me. It's still planned. It's not something that we want to.
It's funny because if you look at Starchives and you just search for modularity, John Crew gets asked this question multiple times, and his response, like every time, is everybody thinks that I have a vendetta against modularity and that I'm secretly removing it, and that's not the case. And he repeats himself like multiple times over each year for like several years up into this point. It's kind of comical.
Yeah.
Get
Give
rid
a
of
quick
or
response to
not doing it and hoping people forget it
golden
exists.
green
Which is
something really.
what I see a lot.
What's up?
Sorry, I didn't know you played it. Do you have a quick response to Golden Greek one? It can't do mining. You can't win with an F8. There's nothing to win. It's combat superiority, yes. It can't mine, it can't haul, it can't medical. You're not winning. You're simply being good at one thing. Yes, you can buy it.
It
Eventually
has
will go away.
its own limitations.
It can be bond with a Retaliator.
Yeah. That it's going to be super expensive to maintain and operate. It's going to have not great range.
I imagine only a few
know.
places will actually be able to repair an F8.
Yeah. There are all sorts of considerations, and everybody just looks at the low-hanging fruit of, oh, it has a lot of guns, so
You can
therefore
buy
it
it
must
and
be
it's got a lot of
good.
guns.
But there are so many different ways that CIG can balance things and be like, okay, yeah, it's good in combat, but it lacks maneuverability, it lacks survivability. It lacks the resource management system means that it
This is
has
very true.
limited ammo.
Dell says gamers are trained to look at DPS. Yeah, that's completely fair. Most
Yeah.
people that are playing Star Citizen right now are not simulator people. They're arcade shooters. They're coming over from like Battlefront or from not Battlefront, Battlefield, and arcade fighters and arcade ship things. World of War tanks. I don't know where ship fighters are coming from. But we have a lot of simulation that's going to be added to this game that they don't want. They have voiced that very sternly. They do not want this simulation in the game. sorry guys, it was kind of the plan from the start. I'm very sorry. Star Citizen is not the game for you. Move along.
Yep.
And that's when these current pay to win ships stop being pay to win, and where the balance actually basically 1.0. This is the entire purpose of getting from here to 1.0, is finishing all these things that make Star Citizen the game that they've been trying to build for the past 11 years.
Yeah, there's going to be so many different scenarios where it isn't the ship that you want for the job, even in combat. And it's a ship that was designed to combat Vandal heavy fighters, because the Vandal were using more heavy fighters, and so it's probably not going to be great against light fighters, and it's going to be very expensive to operate. It's the F-22, F-35 of the Star Citizen universe, so there's going to be lots of drawbacks to it. CIG knows these things, and they have talked about this ad nauseum, where they say, that there's going to be ways that we balance it out, and a ship might be not OP, but more powerful in this scenario, but it won't be useful or be as useful or be as economical in this scenario. Yeah.
Yeah, they are very keen observers of the right tool for the job principle.
Yep.
If you need a space superiority fighter, that is the F8. That is what its job is. But you can also stealth lob a torpedo at it from an eclipse. Like it's just the thing. Obviously, it's a bit small of a target to lob a torpedo from an eclipse. Still. But also, an AA turret is going to kill the crap out of an F8.
Yeah.
It is not a bomber. It's not built for assaulting structures. You will not win against a fully operational battle station with an F8. It's not happening. You're not taking an entire Idris with a single F8. Right tool for the job.
Yep. It's a much bigger target than a Gladius or an Arrow. Going to be much less maneuverable. It's not going to have the range of a Vanguard. There's so many different ways that they can do it.
A lot on Spectrum.
When will it be available in game? When was
the
it
big
added?
thing is it's quite a. There's a core tech blocker on it, which is
323.
Item port system needs to work within object containers, which it does at the moment. Like ships have, or stations have item ports inside them. The problem it has at the moment is object containers assume some sort of level of they are static, they're not dynamic. They can't. Object containers themselves can't move, and they really don't like being deleted and undeleted at runtime. And the item port system within those would have to dynamically attach and detach. So we use the Retaliator as the really good example for this, and when we have this in, it will be the first ship that gets the modularity in game. The Retaliator bomber modules need the item ports for the torpedoes to be placed within the object containers, which the object container itself will be in an item attached to the ship. And we need the game to be able to read those detach and undetach events and link all the power and missile controllers to the items within those object containers. Because at the moment, those torpedo items are actually part of the exterior ship CGA to make them work. So whilst we could do the modularity right now, you'd never be able to get rid of those torpedoes in the ship. So you would swap out the room and have the drop seat room, be able to swap it in. Could do that right now. You just have these 4 size 9 torpedoes shoved in the room at the same time as well. So what we're waiting on is the vehicle tech team to work on that dynamic detach and retaching of item ports in object containers in items attached to ships. It's just a horrible nesting problem. And when we have that, the world's our oyster. That's the only thing stopping us from rolling it out.
So, if you remember, oh gosh, when did they talk about? They had they showed in a video basically the entire layout tech-wise of, I think it was a constellation, and how they have all these object containers within a ship, and then all the little things nested within it. So, you know, this room has these components and these things tied to it and these controls, and how it's all one system. Well, they up until now, essentially, they didn't have the ability to remove an object container, but not take the connections from that object container to the item ports out with it. So if they're trying to remove an object container of a ship that included components, those components would still be there because those are an item port, but the room itself would be gone. And so they had to get the ability to be able to have those nested things dynamically attach and detach with the room, in order to be able to swap those things out, and for you to not only swap them, you know, take them out and have it take all the things that are part of it with it, but also for the new thing to function. So, you know, if you know they had to be able to attach it to, like, you know, the resource management system, the module has to be able to be loaded in and connect to the ship's resource management system, so that way it gets the resources it needs, the power, cooling, what have you, in order for it to function, and also
Star
connect
Wars
with
never had a heavy fighter. Star Wars literally does not have a kin to the F8.
Oh, but it does have a
'Cause
Tantive
the-
4.
So the X-wing is your Gladius, or, well, no, it's your Gladius. That, like, Arrow or Gladius, that's where that sits. It doesn't have something of the caliber of the, well, at least for the Rebels specifically. I'll put that out there. It doesn't have a Rebel version of the F8 or the Hornet. X-wing has superiority fighters, but the light fighters specifically. They are space superior, but they're space superiority light.
I don't know Star Wars enough to have a stake in that argument at all. I just know that they've got ships. Yeah, I don't know how
They got
they're all
ships.
classified.
It's funny. I look up Star Wars heavy fighter ships, and it takes you like 3 lines of images before it gets to Star Citizen's ships. I want a TIE bomb. Yeah, TIE bomb was good.
So,
Oh, that's the B-wing. The B-wing was actually pretty. The B-wing might be the Hornet replacement. That feels wrong, but it is slightly better or slightly heavier gun. Ugh, that feels wrong.
So a year and a half after this IAE 2951 all ships Q&A, we had the SCL, the Invictus All Vehicle Roundtable from last Invictus launch week, so last May. And this is where John Crew talks about how they have since overcome that blocker they just talked about.
Let's go to, we got next two questions are some of those perennial questions here. First one is ship modularity.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even need to read it, do I? But it says, has there been any progress on modularity since it was last talked about?
Yes, good news at last.
Good news.
Oh, well, we'll be the
Good
judge
news.
of that. We'll be the judge of that.
So,
You ready, chat?
are you ready,
Eyes on the
chat?
track, guys. Come on.
So with the development of the Hull C, we've pretty much figured out the last hurdle. And in fact, Chris is responsible for the test that I got him to do for it, where we can have object containers, which is the interior collection of assets, loaded as an item, loaded onto the ship, because that's how the rear of the Hull C is attached to the ship and moves with it. What had stopped us technically going any further with this was items inside those object containers couldn't talk to the vehicle it was connected to.
Right.
So the example of the Retaliator, the torpedo droppy arms, they're actually part of the exterior of the ship currently, because that's the only way they can work. So if we allowed you to swap the modules, no matter what module you had, there'd be a pair of torpedo arms dangling through the middle of it. Chris did a test where he attached a load of missile racks and torpedoes to the inside of the back of the Hull C, which is not going to ship with it.
Wait, you're saying we're not
Unless we
having a
accidentally
torpedo
did it.
Hull C?
Yeah.
There is a shelf that says "Do not submit" in very large letters.
And the pilot had full control of that, and they could fire them. So after the Hull C ships and we found any more quirks with that setup. We're in a position where, to my knowledge, touch wood, technically there's nothing stopping us doing modularity now. That was the last big hurdle for it.
There's nothing technically stopping us from doing it, but there's also priorities and
might be
things, and
logistics.
building a team.
Nothing technically stopping us.
Yeah, nothing technically stopping us. Yeah.
So what I heard was that whole CMX at Citizen Con.
Oh yeah, just full of size 9 torpedoes.
All of the cargo arms are just.
So that was one of the tech things that they had to solve for the whole sea was they could do the animation of the ship expanding and contracting, but when it went from the contracted mode to the expanded mode, all the things in the back of the ship, the engineering part of the ship, were no longer able to talk to the rest of the ship. So you weren't able to, your engines went down, all that sort of stuff. So they had to fix that so that way the back of the ship could work like a module, and the item ports within it would still be able to talk to the rest of the ship, even though it was detached, and then continue to talk when it reattached as well. And so that tech was the last blocker for the Retaliator. And the people were like, well, they said knock on wood. He's like, no, he said that's the last tech blocker. Now we're just waiting for the people and for it to get scheduled. And here we are.
And he said and the reason the knock on wood thing is, well, he said touch wood, which is not actually how the entire what are they called, superstition goes. That's like you miss superstitioned. Anyway, I'm a firm non-believer in superstitions, but anyway, it was not for it working or not. It was for any other problems with that system.
Mm-hmm.
So the system was done, and he said, hopefully that's the last thing we have, then knock on wood. Now we can go forward. So, and because we're getting the Retaliator, that is confirmed as they've solved modularity. Check that off the Kickstarter campaign. Finally, they've solved modularity.
Yeah, they've solved the tech
Onto the
issues of
Endeavor.
modularity. For next ship on the list, Endeavor. Go straight from the Retaliator to the Endeavor. Yeah. Oh man. Some people would be very happy. Other people would riot.
I do not want them to touch the. Honestly, I don't want them to do MISC until 1.0. I know my desktop is the Odyssey. I am longing over the thing every day. I don't want them to touch it till all the master modes and item components and all this other crap's in and done, so it can come out a finalized ship, and they don't have to rework anything.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I want. I look forward to the day when we don't have a ship come out that is already in tech debt. Going through nope, there's too many sea ships. Going through the Carrack now is almost depressing. It's such a cool and big and powerful ship in lore, but it's so janky and half the stuff on the ship doesn't work. And all the tech they used to build it was half-baked.
Yeah,
like the
so
door
much of it
panels
is
and
set dressing, and it isn't functional.
this entire ladder you can't use. Well, door for a ladder. I look forward to the day when we don't have to rework ships, at least within the year they come out. So whatever your favorite ship is for all of you, whatever your favorite ship is, I know you want it soon, but you want that ship to come out last.
So
Rant over.
now we have a list of
Yay,
ships
I
that
like
are,
this.
and I've broken up this list into groupings because the first two, is ships that had the word modular or modularity in their concept sale, and really it turns out that those ships, it was more like in fiction description of how they're built and how they're used, and like in fiction captains could reconfigure them, but those ended up becoming variants. So the first in that, did you just do something to my list?
I split up the ones you were saying.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, how dare you?
I assume the two splits are after the
Yeah.
Starliner and after the Freelancer.
So the first two ships in that list are the Drake Cutlass and the Freelancer. And if you go back and you look at the original transmission, when I say transmission, it's like the announcement that this is being sold as a concept. They said that in both of those that they, the in fiction advertising is that they're modular ships and highly configurable, blah blah blah, and those ended up becoming just variants, and there hasn't been any mention since then of the ships being able to be reconfigured, as far as modularity goes. And so I could see maybe the Cutlass being a thing just because, like, there are some exterior changes, but they're not huge. But really, it's more just interior stuff in the back and a little bit of change in the front. It's not a huge change. Whereas the Freelancer, like the Freelancer Max, is a pretty substantial change, and that like the Freelancer really makes sense as variants because those are pretty different in terms of the hull of the ship. And so that's the first two on the list. And there's actually a total of 17. Yeah. The next group of ships is ships that were sold with modularity as essentially a feature, and the ability to attach and detach modules in order to customize the ship. And so the first of those is the Redeemer. And they talked about this when they finally released the Redeemer. It was like in the SCL or the IC where they talked about it. But they basically said the bottom section, the habitation module, would be able to be swapped out for other types of modules. And that was always really planned. And they did reiterate that with the release of the Redeemer. The Javelin is actually supposed to have multiple modular rooms within it. I don't know how you reconfigure those modular rooms. Like, Naz, I don't know if you remember that like diagram of all the decks and where those rooms were, and they're like in the center of the ship. So I'm like, how do you get the module in there?
Didn't they say quite? No, they did say quite recently, past 2 years, that those rooms are still modular.
I wouldn't be surprised. I didn't go looking for mentions of everything, but I just went back to the original like ship release transmission to see, okay, did it say modularity? Did it say modular? Yes, and that's what is on this list. Yeah.
Well, I guess we got something to go look at the Javelin for. Where's the holes you put the rooms in?
Yeah. Go on the tour, find the tour guide and be, how do I ask the tour guide the question about where are the modular rooms? The Anvil Gladiator is actually supposed to be modular, but the only modularity they've ever talked about is the bomb bay in the center of it is actually supposed to be able to be swapped out for a cargo pod.
So same modularity as the Hornet.
Yeah, in essence, it's about the same thing. And so, is it really modular, or is it, I don't know. To me, it seems more like you're just swapping out item ports. But they did talk about when they released the Gladiator how there would be other modules for it, like search and rescue and salvage, and so. But I think that's kind of
that would be
hoping
great.
At this point.
Lying on the ground and calling for assistance, and a Gladiator shows up, knowing that I'm going to be stuffed into a bomb bay.
Yeah, it sounds like the way that Blizzrad would rescue people. Be like, yeah, just climb in here, you'll be fine. Go ahead and just swipe your UEC card.
I can't imagine just like an absent-minded pilot, just like, oh yeah, let me go rescue this guy. Forgets he swapped out his torpedo bay for a rescue bay. Is on his way home in Quantum, like looking at missions. Oh, there's a simple blow up this outpost. Like, let's go take that. Bombs away, drops the guy on top of the base. It's like, oh no.
Yeet. So yeah, the Gladiator. I should have put this towards the end, but the Carrack has the 3 cargo pods that are meant to be able to be swapped out, all 3 of them, for modules, and we're going to look more at that here in a second. but they never talked in detail. Like these are all ships where they have talked about the ships being modular and that's part of their design, but they never sold, concepted and sold modules for them. They just said it was a feature and part of the ship and it was planned. So that's the second group. The MISC Hull CDE are all supposed to be able to attach modules onto their cargo arms that perform different functions. And they've like batted around ideas for what those could be, but they never concepted them, they never sold them, they never made a definitive list of these are the ones that they're going to do, unlike the Retaliator. Freelancers airlock room plan to have swappable stuff.
Stuff being swappable like components, that's slightly different. The freelance isn't a weird one. But if you look at the original concept page, you can see where they're getting the modularity from, because each of the holes were exactly the same shape, and it was just like the DUR had like extra antennas on it, and the Max had like extra bits on it in different places. So it was like tack on changes. The current version of the freelancers are not tack on changes. It's not the same hole underneath. They stretched and widened some bits.
And
is that what that's supposed to be? That's supposed to be a freelancer bit? I thought that was concept work for the Starfarer.
I don't know. Either way, when we get to this part about the Avenger and the Vanguard, you'll see what I'm talking about in terms of the list and why I set it up the way we did, because what they had initially sort of hinted at with the Cutlass and the Freelancer is what they did with the Vanguard and the Avenger, but then they confirmed what their plans were for those two ships in that sale to later on, whereas they never confirmed that was going to be a thing for the Freelancer or the Cutlass. They just ended up making variants. So there's not really documentation that says, oh yeah, we're going to do this later on in the concept sale, if that makes sense. So continue on with the list. The RSI Apollo, the med bays are technically modules. And so there's two modular med bays in that you would be able to swap out a med bay with a single tier 1 bed for a med bay for tier 2 beds or 3 tier 3 beds, and be able to configure it not to change the, it's still an Apollo, it's still for, medical support, but to be able to configure what levels of medical support you wanted to provide. And that was the modularity that's planned for the Apollo.
Yeah, so the options are, you have, and both the rooms on either side are modularity. So you could have two tier 1 beds, 4 tier 2 beds, or 6 tier 3 beds.
Yeah, and
or any combination of those two.
Yep. Yeah, there's essentially 3 different modules that you can use to configure the 2 different rooms. So that how many does that come out to? How many combinations is that? Maths.
3 times 3 times 3 times 3? 3 times 3 times 3. Yeah. 27?
Yeah.
Wow, technically times 2 because there's 2 sides, so it'd be 54. No, that's wrong.
6? Yeah.
3
I
times
can't math
2
right now.
times 2. 8. There are 6 slots, right? There are 6 slots. I can't math. 6 slots times each slot having. I can't remember how to do this. Oh, this is why you don't do math on stream.
Another one that's interesting
It's definitely
is
more than 6.
the Argo MPUV. And it's interesting because the Retaliator was one of the orange ships in that list that they showed us at CitizenCon in that clip, as well as the Argo MPUV. And the Argo MPUV is supposed to have modular, the pod at the back is supposed to be a module that can attach and detach, and you can carry different types of modules. And like right now, there's just variants, but you're supposed to be able to swap out those modules to reconfigure the, what it's supposed to do, whether it's carry people, carry cargo, who knows what else. Yeah, a reasonable number.
Yeah, I don't know how to do math where the number changes the more you or the less you have. because it's not because there's not 6 slots for each device. There's 6 slots for tier 3, 4 slots for, so it'd be 6 times 4 times 2. That also sounds wrong because there's a repetitive thing. 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2. I don't think where would 5 and 3 be though? Oh, because you can do the mix. Yeah. There's a lot. Either way, there's a lot of combinations.
Yeah. So continuing with the
What
list,
were we talking about? What ship are we on to?
the Genesis Starliner is actually supposed to have a modular interior, but I hate to say it, but it's really old. But they sold it as modular and meant to be able to be configured to do different things. But then they came out with the Hercules. So I think if they released it and they didn't make it modular, there'd be a lot of people that would be upset. But the number of people that probably own it is pretty small relatively. So we'll see what they end up doing with it. But it's another one of those ones where they said it has a modular interior and that you could swap out the interior modules to change the function of the ship. You know, like they talked about early warning, like an AWACS type system. I think there was like a cargo module talked about. You know, they never made a concrete list. They never sold these modules. They just said that it was meant to be modular.
I would love if the Genesis actually filled the role of the C3. That would be great. That'd be honestly amazing because I would. So it's supposed to have that lower deck in most configurations they showed back on ISC many years ago. The bottom deck was almost always a roll-on, roll-off cargo. Specifically the military one, and I think it was the front half of the main civilian one was just roll on cargo for vehicles and things, but that mid tier was always your heavy transportation, so lots of seats or beds or whatever you're doing, and then there was a top tier for activities. I guess you could put more people up there, you could do a briefing room, you could do a cafe. But it could honestly, if you try and put all cargo on those 3 decks, plus obviously crew quarters, you could get easily to a C3 amount of cargo.
Yeah,
especially with that roll on roll off kind of idea.
And I mean that's without changing the dimensions of the ship either. You know, who knows what when it goes through its, you know, updated concept pass, like what's it going to even look like? What are its dimensions going to be? You know,
it's sad that the less ships are in a category, the less likely it is we're going to be seeing them anytime soon.
Yeah.
So we're getting RSI because RSI has most of the ships that are not done. And hopefully, I don't care if it comes out like I know I just said like a couple minutes ago that I want ships to come out when they're done, not when they need more work. But hopefully, in this whole we're a family shipbuilding method, they actually do the Orion while they're doing all these other RSI ships. I think Misk is next. I think Misk might be next. As far as the a number of ships that aren't done, because there's a whole B, D, and E, and Odyssey, and Expanse. Yeah, so Misk is next as far as most ships that aren't done.
Yeah. Plus whatever else they end up making. You know, because it's just like with the RSI, you know, they're going to add smaller ships to that list while they're going through it.
Yeah, we still have the R Astra to go.
Yeah. So the last ship in the list of ships that are described as modular, sold as modular, but didn't have like a concrete list of modules, and modules weren't concepted and sold with it, is the Drake Caterpillar. And each one of those cargo pod things is supposed to be able to be swapped out for a different module that serves a different purpose. Now, there have been players that have concepted modules, but I have not seen from CIG any concept work on modules. They've just talked about some ideas. But the Caterpillar would be really cool for modularity, and like the cargo pods for the Caterpillar are unironically very similarly shaped to the ones on the Carrack. So the next grouping of the list are ships that are said to be modular, and they designed the modules for them, but then they sold they sold those modules within the hulls as variants, and so you could have that ship but be able to swap it out to essentially be a different variant just by swapping out the room that is that module. And the first on that list is the Origin 600i. And so we've got the touring and the exploration module. And so you should be able to swap out. And we know the 600i got a concept rework and is supposed to get a gold standard pass, but hasn't gone back into production. But they did a good job showing that off to us a while back. But they did reiterate that it is modular. You will still be able to swap out the touring module for the exploration module and vice versa. But they did sell them as full-on variants. They did the same thing for the Aegis Avenger. So the modules are again offered as single unit ships, is the way they described it. And sold as variants, but your Warlock should be able to be swapped. The module, the EMP, right? EMP for Warlock, yeah, should be able to be swapped out in order to make it a Titan, or the what's the bounty hunter one? Stalker. Yeah. And so that's right here. This is the original Q&A from the Aegis Avenger variants. What's the deal with the variants modules thing? Why are the exteriors the same? Will there be new packages? The EMP and cargo versions of the Avenger are currently being offered as single unit ships because the system that allows captains to switch modules is not yet active in Alpha 2.0. Once that system goes live, separate cargo, bounty hunting, and EMP modules like those offered in concept for the Retaliator will be made available. For now, pick the Avenger you want to fly. Or the Avenger you most want to fly, so you'll be able to enjoy it in the verse. So they do still, that it's right here, part of the plan to be able to have it work just like the Retaliator, and you'll be able to swap from one variant to the other by swapping out that interior module. AZ or A007, good to see you. Thanks for coming and hanging out with us this evening. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for the support. And they did a similar thing for the Vanguards with the Battlefield upgrade kits. And this kind of blurs the line between kit and module, kind of like the... oh, gosh.
Part of the ship. Part of the crew. Part of the ship. Part of the crew. Part of the ship. Part of the crew. Part of the ship.
The sound alert got me. Came out of nowhere. Thank you so much for the follow, A0. Really appreciate the support. Thanks for coming and hanging out and being part of the show and part of the community. Modularity 2.0 and 1.0. Yeah. There's going to be, just like they said in the roadmap, insert Star Trek Enterprise theme song. It's a long road getting from there to here. There's going to be, they have a lot of ships that they need to do to be able to do this, as well as bring up to gold standard to make the modules be able to be swapped out. Yeah. If they give the Avenger modularity, then it makes it the best starter. It definitely moves it up on the list a lot, for sure.
Again.
Yeah. But here with... Oh, go ahead,
but
sorry.
I think the entire argument of the Avenger being a starter is still a ridiculous argument because it's not a starter.
It's more of
a class of ship that is starter, and it only consists of like 4 ships, which is the 100 Cutter, Aurora, and Mustang.
Yeah, it's a really good in-between upgrade if you don't go straight to your Cutlass Black or whatever, and instead you take that step in between and you go for an Avenger, because there's a lot you can do with an Avenger, especially the Avenger Titan. But if you can
But
pretty
I would
cheaply get
argue-
those other modules to be able to do other things.
I would argue in a game loop scenario, like when you start with your base, kind of call it Aurora, whatever starter, but I'm picking Aurora, and you are looking at the field of ships and you're saying, what do I move to out of this ship? And I would honestly say, and in this idea, in this landscape that I'm creating, there are secondhand and broken ships that you can buy from salvage yards. So you look at the landscape, you can either take a small step to Avenger Cutlass size. No Origin ship's going to be in this thing because they're all way too expensive, even if they're busted. I would definitely make an argument that it is way better to go from an Aurora to something more like a Constellation or well, Corsair is a little bit higher than the thing, than to take that half step just to the Cutlass or Avenger, because you'll get way more use and you'll have to upgrade faster instead of just sticking with the starter a little while longer while still doing missions. Yeah, it's definitely starter plus. And being able to pick up a second-hand repair job of a Constellation. Also say, gee, please, for the love of everything that is the Constellation, please give it a rework.
I'm convinced that the Constellation will get its gold standard pass during the era of RSI that we're in.
That makes good sense after they've basically in the middle of the field.
Yeah, I don't own a Connie anymore, but if they don't, like, what are you guys doing? You know, because they.
Yeah, no, this is not a 1.0 ship.
Yeah,
this is not a 1.0 ship. This is definitely not ready for that, and so it will eventually need rework.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if they do a good job on the rework or the gold standard, whatever you want to call it, the update to make the Constellation interior actually like mildly feasible or any kind of sanity, because it's stupid right now. The interior is 50% wasted space. Not the streamer. I really want to see it fit into its role of this multi-role, this like miniature enterprise. I want it to be there.
Yeah, what happened to the table?
It's in the floor.
Forever. We don't get it back.
Broken?
Yeah, it's been broken forever.
Yeah, I will honestly buy probably many Constellations if they can fix that problem with the interior space being absolutely wasted. If they can fix that and give me that tiny that pocket-sized enterprise, I will definitely own probably a couple of them. I'll probably own a Taurus, not on the website, but in-game. A Taurus, and Aquila, and between the two, I wouldn't need an Andromeda. Just, I really want it to look. I want it to be good. I love RSI. I just want it. I want it to be. Yes. I want one, the interior to live up to the exterior, and two, I want the entire ship to live up to what the feeling I have towards the idea of the Constellation to be. Like, I want it to live up to the Aquila commercial.
Yeah. It has the potential. I feel like they'll do it justice, but I also don't envy the team that gets assigned to it, because they will have their hands.
Oh man, I would love them to tell me how many times it fails its no-go gate.
Yep.
For the new, like, how many thumbnails did you do? How many CIG? How many?
So the Vanguard was similarly handled similarly to the Avenger. So upgrade and add-on sale. Do you already have an Aegis Dynamics Vanguard from the previous concept sale when they sold the Warden? We have two upgrade options, and this is from the post Vanguards, and then there were three. This is when they released the other variants. We have two upgrade options depending on your particular preference. Upgrades will convert an existing Vanguard Warden into a Vanguard Sentinel or Vanguard Harbinger. And at this point, I don't think they hadn't even released the hoplite yet. The upgrade will convert your entire ship to the new variant in both appearance and specifications. Essentially, you're trading in one ship for another while preserving LTI and any other bonuses. A set of battlefield upgrade kits are also available for those who would like to keep their older Vanguard Wardens. This upgrade kit functions the upgrade kits function as in-universe part sets, which convert the existing ships to the variant's specifications. This allows you to swap between the abilities of the Warden, Sentinel, or Harbinger at will. Modularity. The upgrade kits exist in worlds similar to the interior Retaliator upgrade pods and do not change the styling of the individual ships, just the weapons and other upgrades installed. And those, like if you look at the Harbinger and you go inside versus the Warden, you're losing beds and you're getting torpedo bays and so on. And so it basically swaps out that interior module, that interior object container, for the one from the other ship, and converts it. But the other thing that it would change would be like the weapons on the turret, and the nose weapons. So it's not just the interior module like it would be for the Avenger, but it's also the kit that includes the changes to the turret and weapons and so on. Why would you want to swap out the torpedo bay? If you've got beds that function as escape pods, isn't that a torpedo bay already, Blizzrad? It's Schrodinger's torpedo bay. Yeah, that's a BF downgrade, K. But so yeah, it's very much a this is modularity, but they sold the battlefield upgrade kits, and whereas they didn't sell the modules for the Avenger, they confirmed that they wanted to be able to sell those later and be able to swap in and out from variant to variant, just like they want to do for the Vanguard. So that's why they included them in the same list together along with the 600i. Basically, you can swap from one variant to another with the purchased modules, but the only one that they sold the modules for out of that list was the Vanguard. Almost sounds like the F7A kit they just ruined. How did they ruin the F7A kit? It was just cosmetic. Now it's a whole ship. I paid $20 for one of the rarest ships in the game that is also more powerful than the F7C that I had before. Like, that was a pretty sweet deal, and it went to charity. One of the best decisions I ever made. I wanted an F7A Super Hornet. You wanted the 2-seater thing? Because the F7A doesn't have 2 seats. That's the F7CM. So basically they just said, okay, we're not going to make the F7CM look like a 2-seat F7A. We're just gonna give you the F7A Mark 1. I mean, I'm thrilled with the decision they made. It was a very good investment for me, but yeah, like there's nothing. If you, the other thing is the other question I have is I bought an F7CM. It's the digital kernel with LTI package from way back. So do I get to keep that and I have a second ship for only $20, or does it convert my F7CM from my digital kernel package? Because that's the ship that kit would have been applied to. So I don't know. Either way, I'm happy. I'm okay with it. But so that's the third group in this list. The last group are the ships that are modular. Oh gosh.
Part of the ship. Part of the crew. Part of the ship. Part of the crew. Part of the ship. Part of the crew. Part of the ship.
Y'all gotta warn me when you do that, because every time I'm looking at something else before, because the little animation thing will pop up on the screen before the sound starts. But if I don't see the animation, I'm completely surprised by the sound, and the sounds play really loud in my headphones. Fucking teamwork. God damn it, Blizzrad. That's the loudest one too. I really need to go through and adjust the volume on these ones, because it's weird because I've watched the stream later and I'm listening to it and it's not nearly as loud on the stream watching it later as it is when it plays live in my head. Not in my head, in my headphones, which are on my head. You know.
By my pretty floor bonnet, I will end you.
Yeah, Remco, I don't know, man. You know, I think if you're getting 2 ships and you only had to pay $20 for the second ship, I think it's a pretty dang good deal. Yeah, because it's one of those things where it's like, I'm not worried about it at all. I got a super rare, pretty powerful fighter, medium fighter for $20 that helped a veterans charity, which perfect time for the plug. I keep no monetization for myself via all the content, this podcast, anytime I stream on the channel, as well as the revenue that I get from YouTube. All revenues are donated 100% in their entirety, plus me giving a little topper to round up to the next highest $50 when I get a payout to stackup.org. So if you want to learn about stackup.org and what their mission is, you can put !stackup in chat, and you can follow those links. And if you want to donate directly to stackup.org to help support the cause, !charity in chat. And you can follow that link to my donor drive. But stackup.org helps combat PTSD in veterans and active duty military members through the power of gaming by connecting them with video games and video gaming communities like this one that we are all a part of right here. I'm a veteran, and I'm an actively serving member of the Army National Guard. I'm a Army flight paramedic, and I have PTSD. I have a disability rating from the VA for PTSD, among other things. And this is my therapy. Hanging out with Naz and you freaking hooligans in chat is what helps me manage my PTSD. So thank you for being my unpaid therapist, especially you, Nazeris. I believe, this works for me. Playing video games with you guys and talking about video games is what works for me. And I know it helps other people. And so that's why I support stackup.org. So little segue, but it was a good time to talk about it.
Yep.
One of these days we'll have to get like me and Nazeris in a room together with one of those therapist couches. And Nazeris is like a little notepad, and tell me about your feelings, or how does that make you feel, Tree, or how do medical beams make you feel?
Let's unpack that.
Yes, you can get a VA rating and be in the Guard. I don't know what the max rating is for being in the Guard. I know that I had to reduce all 3 aspects of my rating, my injuries, down to 10% each in order to get mine down to 30% in order to fly. I don't know if you can have a higher rating than that and still be in the Guard. I'm assuming you can. But in order to get my wings and be a flight paramedic, I had to keep it at 30% or below. So, yeah. I love the Guard. It's a paid hobby. It's super chill. We get to do a lot of fun stuff and get great training, and they pay for all sorts of great medical stuff for me, like not medical care, but like medical training, because I'm a flight paramedic in the civilian side. So it works out really well, but it's not for everybody. So let's continue on that list, because then we got a few more things to talk about, and then we need to get into the quantum simulation.
One more bit.
Yep, that'll be shorter. It's not nearly as complicated or in-depth as this. So the MISC Endeavor, the RSI Galaxy, and the Aegis Retaliator were all concepted as being modular, and modules were sold for those ships. And there's a list that will probably be added to, but they did sell those modules. Like I bought the medical module for the Galaxy, to go with my Galaxy. I don't have any of the Retaliator modules. I did buy the hospital module and the hangar module, I think it was, for the Endeavor. I forget how that worked out. That was ages ago. But those are the only 3 ships. What am I hearing in the background?
Oh, my cat at the door. It's fine.
Oh, okay. It sounded like somebody was splashing in the bathtub. But those are the only 3 ships that had modules sold for them. So the last bit of this Spectrum Pulse is about setting some expectations regarding player-facing modularity. Because it's one thing to be able to swap out and go from variant to variant of a Vanguard or an Avenger. But things for like the Carrack and the Galaxy, in terms of how you'll be able to swap out the modules, where you'll have to go, what the process will look like, and how much freedom you have for swapping out those modules. And so this quote was, I thought, really important, and thank you to everybody in my community for helping me find this, because I was looking for it and couldn't find it. But I thought this is kind of important because it kind of contrasts what we heard about in the Q&A for the Galaxy.
So speaking of the Carrack, we talked about swappable pods during the presentation. Can you talk a little bit more about their function?
I can talk very high level, loose about their function. So we build them as modular ones. The ones you saw in our panel and you'll see it release are the bog standard cargo ones. They have an elevated gantry through it, so you get more cargo underneath. One of the earlier versions we had no gantry, and the SEU capacity of the Carrack at that point was low 300s, high 200s. So by putting that gantry in, gave us almost 200 extra SEU across the ship, which is good. But like I say, they're modular, so we can do other versions in the future. One we've thought about, but it's not going to come with the release, is a ballista actually fits lengthways in those things. Squeaky tight, but it does fit.
Wow.
So you can do that. There's been talk of doing like a little science lab area. I think that was in one of the original texts that you and Dave wrote, perhaps, on the Carrack mini story.
Oh, yeah.
So science lab, it's an exploration ship, makes sense. You drop off a little science pod to do your experiments on the surface.
Okay.
Hightail it out of there, but for now, all we're planning and committing to doing is the base cargo ones.
Cool.
Like the Caterpillar, we'll talk about more about those pods when we're at the point where we're actually going to physically make them.
So nice that they mentioned the Caterpillar, reaffirming the modularity for those cargo pods. And he alluded to there was a lore piece involving the Carrack from ages ago where they talked about, and in that lore piece they talked about it having a science pod and everything, but that was in fiction. But he says they're not committing to any other modules, just the cargo modules, but they have batted around ideas for those modules. But he did talk about being able to drop a science pod on the ground. Now, he didn't confirm that as a feature, but it's, you heard what he said. These are ideas. We're not committing to anything else. We'll talk more about them when we get to modularity. Well, here we are. So hopefully they're going to be talking more about modularity in the near future after 323.1 or .x. But people latched onto that statement of being able to deploy a module onto the surface and be able to sort of use it as like a mini base, be able to operate on the surface from that module. But here we are, more recent, several years later, with the Q&A for the release of the Galaxy, which is modular. So they say, can the Galaxy's modules be dropped off planetside? That's why this is asked, because people remember what they said regarding the Carrack, even though it wasn't a hard commitment or anything, to create a temporary base of operations. No. The modules themselves require power and cooling from the ship itself, so they are not able to function independently. In addition, they're installed with a covering cap to lock them into place, which would need removing first. That being said, part of the tech of the modules allows for a module to potentially have its own self-contained resource management system and have its own components. So you could, in theory, technically have modules from a Carrack with size 0 components or whatever that could be a self-contained resource management system and be able to be deployed. But I don't know about, and Nazeris, feel free to let me know what your thoughts are. For me personally, I'm taking this as confirmation that they're not going to let you deploy the modules, the functional modules of the Carrack. I could see maybe dropping the cargo pods, but I could see making it so that way if you did have a science module or something like that, something with function, that it wouldn't function. They wouldn't let you drop it off because it's connected to the resource management system. That's my thought on that.
Is that you asking for my opinion on that?
Yeah.
I think there can be both. And
Porque no las dos?
Yeah, I think there can be both. Specifically because they reiterated that is one of the things they were thinking of. And it makes sense for specifically the Carrack because they are drop pod-esque modules. I can imagine... No, the Caterpillar couldn't do it. It's basically a Carrack unique feature.
Mm-hmm.
They are built to be hot swappable. And
technically, it seems like it could work with the way they described it. You
just drop it there, and it still has its little power plant and everything. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But all the other ships that have this room modularity are very specifically integrated, and there's like installation time on these modules. They're not just containers that are attached to it. Bar maybe the some of the stuff for the Endeavor, like very very few of them. With the Constellation and for the Galaxy and the Caterpillar, they're very specifically, you have to do some maintenance to the ship to attach and detach these modules. There are panels that need to be removed. There are screws that need to be loosened and tightened. Like there's entire cap on the Galaxy, and for the Caterpillar, to pull out one module, you need to dismantle the entire ship.
Yeah, you'd be left with that back engineering section in the command module, which is supposed to detach.
Unless you're swapping out just the front.
And I'm hoping that, because they also mentioned the Caterpillar there, that we will get information that, like, maybe one of the low-hanging fruit things is, hey, this is modular now. Can we, because that tech for the command module to be able to be attached is modularity tech. And so that blocker is now gone to be able to do that. To me, that makes the Caterpillar that much cooler to be able to have that little thing detached, and it's like a little multi-crew herald to be able to leave your cargo in space and then go down to the surface and negotiate a deal or
vice
whatever.
Versa.
Yeah.
Like land your cargo bits, your modules, and then use it as a base and just fly around with a command module.
Yeah.
Like the Caterpillar is going to be stupid versatile. You can have if you can buy aftermarket rear sections, you can have a ton of different just versions of the Caterpillar that you just fly the command module and connect to the ones you want and then drop them back off.
Yeah.
Whichever they support. If not, just buy a bunch of extra Caterpillars in game.
Yeah. The other thing that I thought was really important to mention, because a lot of people think that you're going to be able to swap out modules like at any station and what have you. And so I thought it was really important to share this bit from the Galaxy Q&A, because I think it's really important for managing expectations. What is involved with changing out the modules? For example, how long will it take? Where can it be done? And can we change modules on the fly, or do we have to transport all modules to one location first, like other ship components? So it's important the context, like other ship components, is important because they confirmed that size 3 components would only be able to be removed at a space station, and size 4 components would only be able to be removed and swapped out at a capital class dock, shipyard, essentially. And so you are limited where you can alter your large and capital ships, their component loadouts. And those are components, and we know how big those components are. So a module, especially a module, is much larger than a component. Even if it's just like the Avenger module, that back section is pretty big. It's bigger than a component. A size 3 or even probably a size 4 component. So it's important to put this into context, because if you have to go to those specific locations for a component to be able to do those things, swapping out a module is an even more involved process. So due to their size, the modules need to be swapped out at a location capable of that type of work. And they specify, such as Cousin Crow's shops. Shops being plural, it's a chain, there will be more than one, and will require the ship to be there for a period of time. Exact timings are still to be determined. Due to the relative ease of access, remove a lower cap, then exchange the module. This should not be a lengthy operation, provided all the required parts are at that location. So they say required parts. So to me, that suggests that not only are you going to need the module, but there are going to be parts that are needed in order to connect that module like to that ship's resource management system, and make it function. Some sort of, it'll cost you money and certain resources or whatever to do that. And that's not confirmation. That's just me speculating based off what they said. But they specifically say Cousin Crow's shops, which are meant for customizing your ship. It isn't just your paint job and aesthetics and stuff. It's for swapping out modules. That's when they talked about the Kraken. I don't think that's modular. I think that's more of a permanent conversion. I don't think you'll be able to swap back and forth. I don't remember.
You will be able to swap back and forth.
You can? Okay, so add it to the list.
Yeah. It will be an extended stay. Like, it is retrofitting the ship, so it is a refit. It's not.
But that
just
was a thing
plop,
specific
plop.
to Cousin Crow's. Like when Cousin Crow's came out, that was a specific thing that when the privateer thing came out. That was they specifically mentioned doing that at Cousin Crow's.
Yes.
Now they say Cousin Crow's shops, so I'm sure there will be multiple Cousin Crow's in the game. But I would also assume that there are multiple shops that do that besides Cousin Crow's, multiple chains, just like we have multiple types of rest stops. Yeah, we have Cryastro, we have Rest and Relax, right? Yeah, Rest and Relax. I forget the other big one. There's like, there's 3 big chains. Well, there's going to be different chains of these shops that do the modularity swaps. But I think, and this is not a confirmation or anything, but if Cousin Crow's is at a landing zone, I feel like it's probably a pretty safe bet that these shops are going to be at landing zones or major hubs. Essentially, I could see one being at Levski, all the major landing zones in Stanton, your other cities and stuff. Because it is a bit of a process and it's a bit of an undertaking. And so I don't think that this is something that's going to be done at every station, like swapping out components is. And so I wanted to add that in there in order to manage expectations so people understand that, CIG has created these landing zones and these locations, put a lot of work into them, and they want you to go visit them. You can live out in space and bed log all day long and stuff, but if you choose to, have a modular ship and want to be able to swap out the modules, you're gonna have to go to a specific location to be able to do that. You're not going to be able to do it yourself with your, multi-tool, something like that. So, manage expectations accordingly. I think that's it for our review of modularity. Do you have anything else that you wanted to add? But yeah, I need to add that to the list, the Drake Kraken. Holy fuck, how did I forget that? That would be up there with the 600i, essentially, because that's sold as variants, but meant to be swappable. So,
the only thing I'd add is, much like 4.0 is the floodgates to more planets, the Retaliator base and its module is the floodgates to the modules being added to older ships and more modular ships coming out in the future.
Mm-hmm. And like with the tech being there, I feel like these modules and doing these gold standards to include these modules, and like doing the Avenger, making that modular, and then bringing the Avenger up to gold standard as well as each of the little modules, like new team, your new team, that's coming on, that instead of making variants like they've done for the cutter, equivalent level of work to be able to do that for your Avenger and your Vanguard, bring those up to gold standard, and make it make those modules work, make them separate those object containers. I could definitely see that being something they do with the new teams in terms of bringing them up to speed. Pardon me, wake up.
Yeah, makes sense.
So that was our Spectrum Pulse, our modularity review, and looking at the gold standard work for the Retaliator that's coming in 323.x, aka 323.1, aka Invictus Launch Week. So soon TM. The last thing that we're going to talk about tonight is a scanner anomaly that I wanted to do. Don't
worry, this one's very short.
Yeah, it's relatively short. We'll probably tangent a little bit, but this is just sharing some information regarding these things in order to give a better understanding of why CIG made this decision. And actually,
that's not dead.
Yeah. So this question was asked on Spectrum on October 23rd, 2023, 6 months ago. First off, thanks for a great CitizenCon, and congrats to CR and all the amazing devs for what they have achieved. I was, however, surprised that there was no mention of Quanta, it's Quantum, or the economy. When can we expect an update? Is Tony Z still alive? So the reply was by Balt CIG, which is Benoit, the chief technical officer for CIG, the guy you saw doing the server meshing presentation.
And the guy in charge of making Quantum actually work.
Yeah.
He's the designer, he's the engineer.
Yeah, he's the engineer. This is what, if you go back and watch the Quantum presentation, Tony Z and one of his counterparts in Austin are presenting it. They're the designers, but they worked with, I've been working with people from Montreal since the beginning. Martin, and I forget there's another dev that they reference, Martin something. And they even talk about this in this AMA that we're going to look at here in a second. So Benoit replies, here is a quick summary of my answer on that stream for you all. Because he hopped in somebody's chat. I forget. Was it... he was in somebody's chat and talked about it. I forget where. The Quanta simulation, and it's Quantum. Come on, bud. The Quantum simulation is in a good place at the moment, but lives in a closed system. So the simulation is running somewhere, and they can run it and play with it and tweak it and get data out of it. But it's not really hooked into the game right now. It is running in a closed system. We want the sim to make a difference to your play experience, and so for the moment, have paused its development in favor of developing the gameplay systems. Key into that gameplay systems part. The game needs for the sim to hook on, economy and otherwise. The server meshing, economy and otherwise, because Quantum is not just the economy.
That's actually something that not a lot of people understand. And ignore the VMPC, subsumption MPC argument that is part of Quanta. There is more to Quanta bits, quantum system, than just price fixing. It is much bigger than just that. It is the simulation side of resource management. I'm sure we'll talk about that later.
Yep.
It is not just price fixing. And that needs to be talked about more when people start talking about Quantum on Reddit and on Spectrum. So if any of you guys in chat, just kind of leave a little note saying, hey, there's more to a Quantum than just economy.
Yeah. That's why Tony Z did that second presentation. We're using bounty hunting, as an example, because there are all these services that are within the simulation that are part of it, besides just Quanta moving goods around. And generate. The biggest thing that Quantum does is generate contracts. And they use service beacons a lot, essentially as a surrogate for it. But it generates contracts that players and NPCs are competing to do. It's not there to change commodity prices. It's there to generate a cargo hauling mission for you to move those commodities from where they're produced to where they need to go to produce something else.
Yeah, the biggest function for me is population control. And what you're going to see. Its job is to flavor the universe realistically, or flavor the universe depending on what the universe is, not what designers want it to be. So when you walk into, or when you fly into a new part of space, or when you walk onto a landing zone, Quantum has decided, because of all the data it has around, what the mixture of NPCs, Xion, whatever you see, is going to be. How many of them are factory workers? How many of them are high-class citizens? How many of them just came off of work? How many of them are just waking up? That's Quantum's job, is to flavor the universe. That is my biggest thing about Quantum, and that's why I'm really excited to see. Not the price fixing, because every game has price fixing. Like every economy-based game, every MMO has some version, some simulation that they run for price fixing. It's not new. Quantum was never needed to do that. It's all the other stuff and the depth of simulation they're going to get all this to work, and then to use that data to flavor the universe. And like Trey said, like the contracts, to make it both player and NPC, so PvE contract management.
Sorry, I'm actually going to pull up the Delta browser for the Shiny Tracker, because the other thing is people think that that hasn't been worked on at all, and it's been worked on a lot. They just have paused development.
Oh,
yeah.
They were working on that. Like basically, they've been working on that since Tony Z started.
Let's see, where is it?
Did he get in like 2013, 2014? I don't think he was there quite at the beginning, but he was there pretty early. But that was why Tony Z was hired. It was the quantum simulation.
Yeah, in order to, I mean, that was the end goal of all the research and the planning. But in order to make the simulation do what quantum does, that was the goal.
Yeah. His purpose was to make the systems that they now call quantum.
Yeah. So the where was I? So
everyone seems to be like Tony C before my time. Yeah.
So
and he has been, like, they haven't talked about him a lot, and I just hope that, well, I hope he's working, because I would hate for CIG just to be outputting money for him to like be on the bench.
Yeah.
So,
and it's not A0. It's not that it needs server meshing. It's that with server meshing being brought in, a lot of these services that communicate with these servers are also what the quantum simulation communicates with.
Yeah,
and we'll read about that here in a second.
It's a tangential requirement.
Yeah, it's a lot of those services are getting updates and refactors in order to work with server meshing now that they're finally implementing it. And so until those services are basically in a finished state for dynamic server meshing, they don't want to integrate quantum into those services and have to communicate with those if making changes to those services will break the simulation or break the simulation's ability to communicate with the game.
And on top of that, like, the inventory needs to be ready for server meshing. But quantum also deals with the inventory because it has to put stuff in the inventory for things to be moved or primed or whatever. So not directly, obviously quantum is not inventory management directly. That's not how that works. But it has to flavor it. It decides what flavor the inventory is going to be, and the game, the DGS is probably where the logic actually runs to fill the inventory.
Mm-hmm.
So if this is a raider base, the quantum will say this area is owned by these raiders, and the DGS will say, okay, I'm putting in this loot table. That's kind of that thing. So now that we have inventory being moved off of the DGS, we can now finally have that system happen. And that has to go through all of the different services that interact with the actual gameplay, as he said.
Yeah, see, So, first point, have posits develop in favor of developing gameplay systems. So what we do, gameplay systems, that the game needs for the sim to hook on, economy and otherwise. The server meshing work, like we just talked about, also has a very large impact on how the sim communicates with the game state, and so have thus prioritized the other work in the short term, not long term, short term, until we can come around and make the simulation affect live gameplay and make a difference like we intended since the beginning. So, how the sim communicates with the game state. So the game state is what the servers communicate to us. The servers take the aggregate data from all the different services that are connected to it and share in order to communicate the game state to the client, the servers in the replication layer. So the best example for this is like right now they're doing a refactor of the mission system in order, they talked about it in the recent monthly reports, and it's something we've known about. They've had to refactor numerous systems in order for them to work with server meshing, because they have to, the game, if you have a mission, they split Santin right down the middle with 2 servers. And if you have a mission and you're on one server and you cross that line at the next server, they need that mission to carry over with you. They need that your missions to persist. So that way, when you log out and log back in, your mission is still there if it's meant to be, if it's not like a timed mission. And so they're refactoring the mission service in order for it to work with server meshing. Well, if Quanta...
Apparently, Zelfax says that there was an episode where they say that Quantum actually does decide the loot pool itself. That's not a locally run BGS thing.
Yeah.
Also, Arrow said, I'm just going to read it as Arrow, I'm sorry. Said that couldn't they apply a manual approach before Quantum? Yes. If you read the monthly reports, the economy team is all they talk about is they're currently implementing a manual balance on the entire economy as we speak.
Yeah, they're essentially setting a baseline, and that's supposed to come in 323, right? That's a 323 thing, isn't it?
Part of it.
Yeah.
There's
it's
a lot
multi-step
to do,
part, but yeah, the first step.
I think we're getting weapons, ammo, and a couple other things. I don't know if they've actually said, but we'll figure out in the monthly report that's supposed to be out in next week?
Yeah, tomorrow. Wait, yeah, tomorrow. Hooray! Monthly report tomorrow. Yeah, but we'll cover the monthly report next week.
I did not look at the This Week in Star Citizen. I'm a bad human being.
So, but the refactor for the mission service is a great example of how Quantum needs to interface with the servers in order to thus interface with us. And they don't want to hook Quantum into the mission service and have it be generating missions only for all of that to break. And then if it's generating the missions for the game, and now the game is reliant on the missions from Quantum, and then that breaks because they introduce server meshing and the mission service doesn't communicate with the servers and server meshing appropriately, that would be bad. We would have no game. We would have no missions, no contracts, no nothing. And so until the dust settles from refactoring the services to work with server meshing, they don't want to tie in Quantum with all these different things until they know what changes have been made, so that way they know what changes they have to make to the Quantum simulation to allow it to hook into those different services. And it's the mission service is just a good example because they've talked about it recently, but there's a lot of different microservices that the game runs that have been getting refactored for years now in order to get ready for server meshing. The mission service is just the most recent one that they've talked about, and most recent one they've been working on. If you played in the server meshing test, you'll know that your missions didn't work. They didn't cross from server to server because they hadn't. It's the server meshing test ran on a 3.22 build, not a 4.0 build that had that update, that updated mission service.
And Arrow then says again, a balance that is more frequent than once per patch. No, they're not. As far as we know, they're not planning on a active manipulation of the economy within the game until Quantum. It's just not in the design. We've heard nothing on that. They've never planned, and they do say pretty frequently, maybe once a quarter, maybe once a year, whatever frequency, it's somewhere near there, that they don't want to touch the game at live. And they just mentioned early this year, last year, that they have no interest in policing the game. They are making systems so the game does it itself. So they're not planning on doling out bans and getting in there and cleaning up griefing and PvP, unwanted PvP, whatever it is. That's not their plan. Their plan is to completely hands off. They're taking the exact opposite approach, like the stark opposite approach of Helldivers. Helldivers used to be just Joel. Now it's an entire Joel team of people who are in there tweaking all the knobs and very specifically bending the universe to the game masters or the game master team will, so that it created a very specific, tailored experience for the players. Star Citizen is hit start, run away, see what happens.
Yeah,
it is. They have not planned that.
I would say that so Tony Z was led this team, or part of his purview was this team as among others, and so Tony Z wasn't just working on Quantum. They had lots of things that they were working on. So here's the progress tracker for systemic services and tools. It is no longer systemic services and tools. It's the economy team, and they're like, this is the one thing that I'm interested in from the new progress tracker, is seeing how the new teams breakdown works, because these things got divvied out to the economy team as well as other teams, and so I want to see where these things landed in terms and the dust settled. So these, the quantum simulation, the virtual AI service, all these different services are still being worked on, and they don't require the quantum simulation to work. These can still hook into the servers as it is in order for them to function and get tested. So I wouldn't be surprised if, along with creating the baseline for the economy, if they were also continuing to work on these services, especially like the things for
and I could see it
bounty hunting.
I could see it going both either or way. Either they're using Tony Z because he is an economist. He is the guy the lawyers call, and not lawyers, but the big firms call to make them a program to predict the economy so that they can make educated guesses about the economy. That's his job. So I can imagine that he's either working with Quantum to simulate things so that they can build their baseline and then handing that data over to the devs to implement into the game, or he's continuing to work on the systems and nail down the algorithms and formulas that the game's going to use with the resource network and with the quantum simulation and with volumes and factions and things. Because when last time we heard of Quantum, they didn't talk about factions. They talked about 3 types of things: workers, pirates, and police. But they never said what happens when there's 2 different pirates and 5 different police. Well, 4 different police. Yeah, 4. So for Stanton, there are at least 4 gangs. There are 4 different securities places. Not to mention, we have a jump to Terra. So all the traffic coming from that, we have a jump to Magnus, we have a jump to Nyx. Not Nyx. We have a jump to Pyro. And what was the other jump point? Magnus. No, Magnus, Terra, Pyro.
From Stanton?
Yeah. Isn't there
just
4th?
Magnus, Terra, and Pyro. There's 3.
Okay. I thought there was 4. So all of that traffic and their gangs and security stuff has to be thing. What happens when they mix? So like formulas need to be made. That is not a simple let me just if we have X amount of this and X amount of this happens. It's a lot of stuff needs to be written down. I imagine there's no shortage of work to run algorithms on all of this data to figure out what happens when stuff doesn't go to plan. What if the fire rats decide, hey, it's getting a bit too hot, as far as xeno threats being a bit too iffy. Why don't we just like move
Swear
to
by my pretty
Stanton?
floor bonnet, I will end you.
Like
That's
that's
rad.
the simulation has to be able to either account for it or have safeties on it to where gangs don't decide to migrate to a different place, which I mentioned is what they will do because they're still trying to get a theme in these systems. And if we're able to just clear out systems of gangs, then players win. And Chris Roberts is not one to let players win.
So yeah, the another good example of what the Tony Z and team would be working on right now would be the ATC service, is another big thing that is having to get refactored for server meshing. So their work hasn't stopped. They're just not working on quantum right now. They're working on other things that are needed in the short term that will allow for quantum to get hooked in later after server meshing is in a more complete state, with dynamic server meshing. But they worked on quantum. Here is the Shiny tracker via Shiny Hobo, who is able to pick out the raw data that is under the hood for the progress tracker, and the progress tracker publishes, and see what actually is being, how many people are being scheduled, how many tasks and such. And you can see that quantum was continually worked on from when the progress tracker started in January 2021, basically all the way through to Q3 2023 when the progress tracker ended. And this is when that announcement got made that they were pausing development. So there had been devs continually working on things for the quantum simulation. So they only recently paused work on it in favor of these other things. Now let's look at this quantum AMA. So the other dev that was doing the presentation with Tony Z for the initial quantum presentation in 2019, his name's Jake Muley. He did this AMA, or they did this AMA where he and some of the devs from the team up in Montreal answered some questions regarding quantum. So one of the big things is kind of telling. So I talked about how there's limitations for quantum, with server meshing, in that introducing server meshing is requiring multiple refactors of existing services that connect with the simulator, or connect with the game, how the game is portrayed to us by the servers. The mission service, the ATC service, all these different things have to be refactored to work with server meshing. And that work has been ongoing for years. You can see that work in the teams that were assigned to server meshing. But in terms of gameplay, so we talked about the server meshing work and the services and how that the sim communicates with the game state, that the server communicates to us. What gameplay systems does quantum really need to be more fleshed out that it hooks into to be released? And the biggest thing to me is resource management. So if you read here, it says, will factory nodes on planets be physical locations in the PU? And if you remember the quantum simulation, they had all these different factory nodes where resources were getting shipped in from mines and places where mining was going on in order to produce power plants and weapons, what have you. And it says, for now, factories, refineries, so like refineries at stations, manufacturing nodes are all virtual entities that exist to spur traffic in the economic simulation and eventually generate service beacons. That's what they do. The whole point is for them to generate a service beacon, and that service beacon is to, hey, I purchased this much cargo or this much aluminum from here in order to make these power plants. I need you to bring it from there to here. That is the mission that that's meant to generate. But in the long term, we hope to link as many things that happen in quantum as possible to the actual player-facing game. So if you remember watching the quantum presentation, they talked about the recipes for these production nodes It requires, this much aluminum, this much gold, whatever, plus this many ticks of labor in order to produce one power plant, one repeater, what have you. Well, all resource management is a recipe system. And so to me, this is saying that for these locations that, the location is physicalized, but these locations are going to be dependent on resource management for their function. And so in order for a distribution center to produce, maybe it's manufacturing, and maybe this is a distribution center that makes coolers. In order for it to make coolers, the resource management system has to be up and running. And so it has to have power. And in order to have power, it has to have fuel. In order for the work to be occurring there, it has to have quanta there to do the labor. In order to make the finished component, it has to have X number of resources. And if you have ever played a colony management system, this is what you are seeing in terms of you're watching your RimWorld sim play out, and you see your little person bring over 5 bushels of corn, and then they have to turn that bushel of corn into a pie or bread. Well, they bring that bushel of corn over to the oven, and the oven has to have fuel, and they have to do the labor at the oven in order to take that resource along with the power at the oven in order to make the thing. Well,
so I'm going to answer like a couple of things in chat.
Go for it. Sorry, I wasn't looking.
Iris, that's fine. Iris said there needs to be a difference between players winning easily and no effect. That's exactly what quantum is. But like I said, there either needs to be something written in for, let's say, the fire rats to be able to migrate, or a system to stop them from migrating out of the system. They will be able to push back, but only so far. But the game's supposed to be able to dynamically do that without interaction. Suddenly, distribution centers by Zelfax are more exciting. This is what me and Trey have been like seeing this entire time. It's like they're right there. They are hubs of quantum.
Yep.
And then Remco said, which I love the node idea because someone can have a job. Exactly. That's one of the points that they made in the Tony Z video. Just CIG has to make it so we don't have to proc the nodes, otherwise the players will gamify it. That is the foundational idea of quantum running not on the server. Is all of the places you could ever have resources be is simulated 24/7 somewhere else. So when you show up, you'll only be seeing the current live version of that simulation that's in the backend.
Yep. And this isn't just generate service beacons for moving cargo. If with resource management, if the distribution center or an outpost or whatever needs someone to do a job in order to produce that output that can generate a service beacon, you can go. The goal is for you to be able to go to that refinery and do whatever the task is at the refinery in order for it to refine raw aluminum into refined aluminum. Just as an example, to turn iron into steel, what have you. But if a player doesn't do it, a quantum or a quanta will do it. And we will be competing with those jobs to do those things. Same thing for mining. If you have a Shubin Interstellar owned distribution center and they are they require labor in order to produce the raw whatever mined resource, you can go do that and help fill that quota, or it will.
Yeah, they took our jobs. Oh my god,
they
that's
took
great.
our jobs.
That's great because they actually do.
I'm gonna turn that into a GIF. I'm gonna turn that into a GIF. I'm gonna do it.
Quantum, we're taking our germs.
But that's
Zelfrax. I'll see how it's pronounced eventually. Wonder if distribution centers become the future of future halves of players. No, but maybe they might have halves. They've said absolutely nothing about players owning or renting them. They've specifically said these are for the on-site workers. Plus, we already have 3 other places to call home, city stations, and our own player-made bases.
Yeah.
Yes, that rhymes. It was not meant to. I didn't really think of it.
But if you
we don't need them. We could always set up an outpost, like a player-made base, outside the door of this facility, like or to drive away, maybe on a road or something.
But they do want these physical locations
Hubs. Sorry,
to
I read halves, not hubs.
you know, they do want these production nodes to be physical locations. Now, obviously, like in the landing zones, you're going to have non-physical locations. Like there's going to be gobs of factories at, some, I'm sure, I would be surprised if there are some that you can visit, say at like ArtCore, but a lot of them will be non-physical locations. But the mining outposts on moons, your distribution centers, the regular player outposts, your refineries at stations, for fuel and refining mined goods. Those are physical locations that will have resource management systems, and the recipe for it to generate the resource or the output that it's there to make will include not only the receipt of raw materials, but also the use of labor, whether it's player or Quanta, to do the task. In order to, they talk about it in the Quanta presentation, it'll take X amount of ticks of, it'll take 10 Quanta, 60 ticks to make, an output of 100 refined aluminum. Well, as a player, you could go and you could do whatever that task is at the refinery, terminal, to be part of that tick process in order to generate that refined aluminum, and you could get paid for that job. And that's something they've talked about in terms of resource management as well as in Quantum. You're competing for those jobs. It isn't just competing for the opportunity to haul those goods back and forth. And down here is another question that further talks about what Naz and I were talking about with server meshing. Is there any tech needed to be, before implementing Quantum, like iCache or server meshing? Oof, iCache. Or can it be implemented right now as in Tier 0 and improve as we go forward? So Jake Muley, not Jake Acapella, says there are always compromises that we can make to get a majority of the benefit before all the necessary tech is in place. And we plan to do that as much as possible so players can begin to feel the benefit of the dynamic simulation. And they did start introducing some things that were Quantum managed into...
Oh, your mic just died.
I turned it off because I sneezed.
Okay.
I didn't want to sneeze right in the mic. That would blow your eardrums. But they did start hooking some things up. But they further go on to say, server meshing and iCache will definitely help with this process, but our tech requirements are more on being able to read and write to other existing services already, like the shopping service, probability volume service, and new dynamic mission service, like we already talked about. Well, Quanta needs to be able to read and write, receive information and give information to those services. But if those services are being refactored for server meshing, it doesn't make sense for Quantum to hook into those until those services are at the at that more finished state, and you don't have to worry about them breaking. So let's. I want to finish this off. Finish off what Naz and I were talking about with resource management, in order to really cement this concept of Quantum really needs resource management in game for locations to be able to hook into those locations and be able to work with them in order to make them function as like living, breathing entities in the universe instead of just a piece of art. So let's hear about what resource management is really intended to do, because everybody hears resource management and they think about ships and engineering gameplay on ships. And that's
just
like...
Before you play that...
Yep, go for it.
Dale was saying, I hope they have large no build zones. So what would be the advantage of having your base next door to a distribution center?
Drive time.
The drive time.
Everybody,
where are you driving?
Everybody hates commuting.
Sure. But you're not like
I want
your
my
job is to get
distribution
cargo
center to
there,
have
or
a
to get
really
cargo away from
good
there.
walkability
You're
score.
flying. Yeah. But
I want to be able to
jobs
ride
are
my bike to work at the distribution center and go turn the knob that makes the refinery go.
So
Sorry.
there's no real advantage of having close proximity to the distribution center, because either you're pulling stuff to it, or you're taking stuff away from it, or you're doing a job underneath it. Either way, you're like, there's no advantage to being in proximity. The only advantage you have is drivability. There's no cargo missions currently you can do with driving. So flying in is not, unless you're trying to be hostile, and if you're trying to be hostile, you don't want your base next door. Like, this is not a thing. I just walked over here from my next door neighbor's house. I'm gonna burn it down. Who do you think they're gonna look at first? You could, Remiko said, you could, in theory, have a free-to-play player make their own, or who can't own a hangar or a ship. I doubt they want to do that, but in theory, that makes sense. Like, wow. People have been wanting no-ship accounts for years now. They exist. You just have to spend $1,000 first. Because it's actually a not bug, but it's a quirk of the shopping system that semi-recently they allowed anyone who spent more than $1,000 to not need a game package, aka a starter ship. So you can technically spend up to $1,000, get the concierge level, and then melt your entire hangar into store credit and not have a ship, but have a game package.
Oh, dang it. Where is that dang sneak peek
Maybe
that they sent
eventually-
out just the other week with the distribution center, that like high level view?
Oh, is the sneak peek the last sneak peek?
Was it the last week's or?
Yeah. Maybe eventually, but I imagine when you first build your base, larger buildings and hangars might not be cheap, but on being close might not allow you to depend on the sea infrastructure, which might be a refinery or larger cheap storage. This is all speculative. Yeah, everything we say, anything I say, anything Tree says, anything you say, it's all speculative. They gave us like no information what base building is actually going to be when because they didn't say they were going to start adding it to the game in January. They said they're going to start designing it into the game, or designing the feature Q1 of this year. So they are still in early stages of actually planning out base building. They know what they want it to do and generically what they want players to be able to do with it, but they have no idea what base building is. I imagine there'll be a lot of edge cases and things like no build zones, and maybe I don't know if they would do edicts for like you can't build size structures within areas. I mean, it would make sense if type of structure, so you can't do like, hey, this is owned, like this area and the area around it's owned by Shubin. You probably can't put mining bases down here. I love that shot. That shot is so good.
It is a really great shot. I'm just looking for the park and ride for the people who like, you know, who ride
so
share.
If you go up the ramp on the bottom and then swing left, there's a big hangar door. There should be a lobby in there.
Okay, so you pull your Ursa in there, and you park in there and you store it for later. But like, where do you lock up your bike? You know, do you do that indoors as well?
I mean, if you keep following that road down next to those containers, it should be fine to put it up to something over there.
Yeah,
it's behind a wall. It makes sense for pedestrian traffic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
You
super
can
cool shot.
Probably go in there, get on the scaffold bit so you're not crossing the roads, and then get into the main building.
Mm-hmm. So
Shubin owns all of the air more than 200 meters above ground.
This
air?
is from...
I don't think Shubin cares about air.
Yeah. This is from CitizenCon 2952, so 2022, the Power Play presentation, and they have repeated this sort of commentary about the breadth of what resource management is meant to be, but everyone misses this because they talked about it in the engineering or resource management ISC afterwards, but
they talked about it at CitizenCon.
Mm-hmm.
When they showed off, like, hey, this is the ship implementation. Everyone just kind of tuned out when they said that.
Yep. But so listen to this. We're even going to put on the closed captions so you can see.
Hi, my name is Dan Truffin. I'm Assistant Director for PU Content, and with Thorsten Leiman here today, we will be talking to you about something we think it will change the way Star Citizen functions and works and how the players will play the game in the future, and that is resource management. Resource management is the underlying system that allows items to produce, consume, and store resources in the game. It is the digital representation of real-life cables, pipes, tanks, batteries, or anything like this that you can imagine.
It's the foundation of the ships, where you have certain resources like fuel and energy powering certain items on the ship, but it's also the system that will lie below any station or any vehicle, anything that you can imagine in our universe that actually requires a certain type of resource.
Resource management is not just a system that helps ships function. It is a thing that's integral to the functionality of the entire universe. It will be the way surface outposts function, underground facilities, space stations, landing zones.
Right there. Everything.
Yep. I mean,
everything is going to run on the resource management system. And what does Quantum do but manage the resource management system in terms of inputs, outputs, and making sure that there are jobs in order to be able to keep it running? So these resource management has to be tied into all these locations. And that they've also talked about player outposts. When you build your base, it's going to have a resource management system. And so in theory, your player base could, you could generate jobs that would be taken, by Quantum and allow Quanta to do those jobs or allow players to do those jobs via the mission service. But the quantum simulation needs to be able to hook into these resource management systems for these locations in order for it to do its job.
No questions.
But if these locations don't have these resource management systems, there's nothing for it to hook into. And so that's the gameplay mechanics that they're talking about. There's really, in reality, is the resource management system. Now, you can't look at resource management for all these places and be like, oh, okay, well, there's going to be size 5 power plants, and size 5 fuel tanks. That's not what they mean. They're talking about the code underneath that basically makes a recipe system for it to work and creates things that are interactable for players in order to interface with that system.
I imagine maybe even 1.0 we'll still have a power facility, let's say in Area 18, that is simply a point on a map that says that's where the power comes from, and that's how the resource network knows where that's from. I don't really see. Well, I guess it's kind of a building interiors question. Is very much a building interiors question. So we'll have to see with that. If power stations and refinery stations in locations, I mean, I know we have. Well, these are also going to be applicable for stations because it's kind of the same thing. Basically, location-based generation type things instead of on your ship you have a power plant or a refinery plant on refinery ships or shield plants. With locations, it will be entire buildings that will serve that one function. So like a hydroelectric plant, that's an entire building, not a component. So I guess that is the biggest question. Like, will we be able to go there? Will we be able to see it instead of being able to see power plants on our ships? Will we be able to see the power plant that runs Area 18? And yeah. I guess I kind of talked myself around to. It's not a question for Resource Network or 1.0. It starts and ends with the question of, is it going to be added with the building interior? The first pass of building interiors.
Yeah. And for things like the space stations, the landing zones, the UGFs, it doesn't have to be something that is a physicalized components. It is just the recipe system for that location that says in order for it to function, it needs fuel to make power, and it needs to have power in order to power the refinery that is at that location, and the refinery needs this much of this raw resource to convert into this refined resource, along with how whatever additives that they end up using for refinery gameplay and such. And then it also requires the labor along with that. That's the resource management system, is that it requires all those resources. It needs to consume those things to produce something else. And it's not like, but it's the same. The code for it works the same as the code for our resource management systems on our ships. It's the underlying code is the same, and they can apply it to a location, just so that way the player facing things that you can interact with, you have to pull this lever and turn this dial and put in this code to get the refinery to do this cycle of labor, or you have to drop off this many SCU into the freight elevator of antimatter fuel to keep the reactor at the distribution center running. But it'll generate the job in order for it to do that. But that's part of the resource management system. And so that's the hard part that people have separating from, there's going to be a power plant and I need to go and use my pyro multi-tool on the size 5 power plant at the station. It's like, no. It's just the under the hood recipe system that will tell you to do this function at the at this kiosk or computer terminal or anything, along with
like,
bringing it resources.
It's kind of, if you've been to Provident at Orison, those tanks are locations. They're not components in your ship like a lot of other tanks or thrusters. I'm pretty sure the tanks are actually for the thrusters, possibly. I forget what they actually are. But instead of being a component that you just pull out and replace, there's terminals, and there's an entire web of stuff on Providence to keep the platform running. They're not just little items that slotted into a spot. It's the entire floating module of the city.
And that's why they used it. I forget, and I should have looked it up for this, and I apologize. But you remember it was an ISC, I think they were talking about, where you would have engineering jobs to do maintenance on those things. And that's part of this system. In order to keep it running,
it was this last CitizenCon. They had to fix a radiation leak.
Yeah, but they've shown that that's the same as doing the maintenance on your ship, except for the thing that you interact with would be different than the thing you'd interact with on your ship, but it would perform the same function. You do this process in order for this this ethereal component to continue to function and operate at this tick rate to generate this much power, to generate this much coolant. I think if you remember from, let's see, it wasn't this it was the presentation this last year, and they showed us the web of the resource management system on the Hercules. I think it would be really cool to look and see what that web looks like for a space station like this. I think this is by Genie Point. Yeah, to have the overlay for that and see what that looks like, and what those interactive points are. Because they talked about that with the design of space stations. They don't have them in the game yet because they didn't put them in, because they didn't make sense to put them in because they wouldn't have a function. But there would be essentially engineering rooms that you would have to go to do these jobs to keep the station running. And it's no different than doing the maintenance on your ship.
I think I've said this like more than anything I've ever repeated, but like they've said stations, one, are very undone. They're kind of waiting for the building interior tech. And two, the final plan for how big the interior station's gonna be is there's gonna be entire internal tram systems inside stations.
Yeah, they itty bitty right now. If you think about the amount of interior space that we interact with is just a small portion of the actual interior volume of this massive structure. Yep.
Yeah, if you've ever been able to glitch into the walls purposely or purposely or not purposely, and see how much of the space we actually use for walking around, it is almost nothing compared to the interior space of that little donut. Plus the ends, plus like even on the image that he has with the hanger flaps, whatever they're called, the hangers in them. Not a lot of that space is actually taken up by those hangars. Plus, you have the cargo deck. You have some other stations of security decks. Like, there's a lot of space.
The other reason is because that space is an object container. They need to be able to. Yeah, they needed to have server meshing at a point where they could potentially break up these interior spaces into different object containers as the population of players increased. Because that's the thing is if you have 1,000 players on a server and a couple hundred of them congregate for whatever reason to buy Genie Point or something like that, and when I say a server, a shard, that you can't have everybody, all that a massive population of people in the stations as we have them now. They have to be bigger. Yeah. So they've already started to add more hangar space and all that. There's going to be a lot more hangars added, more of these arms. They're going to get bigger both inside and out.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I think the best example of future-proofed game space is Riker Memorial Spaceport. Because if you go look at the design both on ArtStation and in-game, the in-game one's a bit smaller. Okay, it's a lot smaller. But if you actually like pay attention to the landing platforms, when you take the train from Area 18 out to Rikers, you go to one platform. There's another platform in front of you that no one accesses. There are 2 more platforms on the other side of the highway. We only go to one of the not districts, but one of the, what are they called? Wings of Rikers.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look from the top, if you go up and look from the top, there is tons of space where there are no hangars or anything that they can very easily, because it's just big flat space, add in as many hangars as needed to fulfill the population that we're going to be having moving through Area 18. This game is set up to get big and dense.
Yeah. Yeah, landing zones, stations, all these things are meant to be able to scale, but to me, when Balt was talking, when Benoit was talking about the gameplay systems, the game needs for the sim to hook on, the quantum simulation needs to be able to communicate with these locations in order to be able to influence the recipe systems, that is the resource management for that location, in order to make it run, in order to generate the jobs and the contracts, whatever you want to call them, to keep it functioning. The refineries at the Lagrange point stations, the mines at the distribution centers, the factories on the planets, even if it's just bringing resources to a freight elevator and dropping it off, well, that goes into that ethereal resource management system and contributes to that that stored resource that that factory will run off of. That includes moving quanta, being able to move the quanta around to get to where the work is that they're going to be doing.
I'm
So
sending you 2 images.
Oh.
There's what we have in game. And there is what the concept art looked like.
Make this. Browser. Oh God, right.
So that's what we have in game. If you just take a second to look at it, like there's obviously plenty of expansion, and those are Bengals sitting in the parking lot.
And those are
Not
there
singular.
just to be able to show scale. Obviously, the Bengal isn't going to be landing. The Javelin isn't going to be landing. Blah,
Javelin.
blah, blah.
The only javelins we have on plants are ones that were unfortunately too infatuated with gravity.
But yeah, there's a lot of room for it to scale up and get muy grande.
And remember, Area 18 is also slated for a complete rework because the planet tech it's built on.
Yeah, all of ArcCore.
Yeah, all of ArcCorp is just completely going to be basically trash because they need to rebuild the buildings to support building interiors. Plus, they're going to be making bespoke buildings for building interiors and blah, 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 blah. So, Area 18 is a great example of one that was already built for scale, and that we had concept art saying they have bigger plans. Not to mention, if you take like the concept art lines up with also the most forgettable location that's not in the game, the Air and Halo gates.
But that's all that I wanted to talk about for this scanner anomaly in order to help everybody understand. And again, he doesn't specifically lay it out, but he does very much hint at, its gameplay systems that it needs to hook onto. Well, what is that gameplay system? It's resource management. That's what I'm hanging my hat on. Is that it's resource management, especially because that's being introduced now, and we know it's going to be at every location, and the quantum simulation is designed to hook into all those locations. But we also understand, why it was put on hold. Development was put on hold because of server meshing, because server meshing affects other microservices the game runs on, and in order to hook into those services really need to be more. They can't be at the state they're at right now before server meshing. They need to be in that post server meshing state for quantum to hook into them. So will the quantum simulation stay on hold indefinitely? No, it isn't dead. It isn't going anywhere. Tony Z hasn't, he could have died, who knows, but he hasn't given up on the quantum simulation. There are very good reasons it's on pause. And that's what we wanted to talk about is, the server meshing work or the related work related to server meshing that we talked about in terms of those services, but also the gameplay system, resource management, and how resource management is so impactful. That's why this quote is so important. Actually, we didn't even finish listening to it.
Surface outpost function, underground facilities, space stations, landing zones, everything in Star Citizen will function using resource management.
So we will start with the smaller vehicles, and the gameplay for those smaller vehicles way more interesting than what we have right now. And from that, we can move on to like bigger ships, and finally the capital ships will have a real purpose in the world, and where it will have a real meaning that you have the multiple roles inside those ships.
It will drastically.
So they're starting off with ships, then they're going to move on to locations.
Yep.
But every location
I can...
is going to have a resource management system running under the hood for it.
Yeah, and I can honestly imagine that we'll be seeing we'll be seeing quantum at this year's CitizenCon.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they gave us an update regarding this and talked about it more specifically, because people do want to know, and in order to dispel the rumors like we're trying to do right now.
We have, I think.
Pardon me.
I don't know if Jared has all of the things lined up for now to 4.0, or is it just his 3.23 lineup for videos? But I don't think we're gonna be like you said earlier. Like, they have everything they're working on for the next 12 months. So I imagine I imagine it's either closer to or at CitizenCon thing. We'll get an update on Quantum. I don't think there's much need to do it before. I don't think Quanta is going to get much of movement before 4.0's out the door, which means I don't think there'll be much implementation of it before CitizenCon.
Yeah, I when they get I don't think that they're going to need to refactor these services post 4.0 that they're talking about. I don't think they're going to need to refactor them again for dynamic server meshing going, after coming from static. So I think that the work for Quantum and hooking it back in will pick up again before the end of this year, because those services will have been refactored, and work will start on resource management for locations, because they are aiming to release resource management for ships with 4.0, and it's all the ships. They've been refactoring everything because their goal is to get it out for every ship in the game with 4.0. But once that's done, then they really need to get to work on that for locations, and expanding that out to all the locations in the game. Now, it isn't as much work because a lot of it is under the hood stuff versus, adding component bays and such like that.
It depends on how closely they're going to be working with the building interior team.
Yeah, but
because
that
will really decide like how much they actually have to wait on them for
Yeah.
hey, we need a resource building. Well, here's your art for your resource building. We need this building, and after that they can go and actually run it. So basically, it'd be a request,
I think they'll do
like,
the
hey, we need all this
ethereal
art.
part first, and that way they can add in art assets later and tie the art assets into it. Because I think the ethereal part is the most important part, along with some of the the location things for doing maintenance. But
Yeah,
physicalizing
it depends on what their priorities are.
Yeah. But I wouldn't be surprised if they got started with that work, immediately after 4.0 and saying, okay, now we're getting to work on building the resource management systems for distribution centers and outposts or something like that. Or space stations and distribution centers.
Yeah.
So we'll keep an eye on it. I'm going to switch screens and we'll do the outro, because that's about all we have for this evening, and it's 11:30. We've been streaming for 3.5 hours, but we covered a lot of stuff. We covered a lot of important things, and I think we've provided a lot of context. And if you've been watching live and hanging out with us, again, if you wanted to refer back to these things and watch more of these videos, or be able to have these links, the full video for the podcast will be up on my YouTube, youtube.com/@tree0311. Not tomorrow, but let's see, tomorrow's Wednesday, so it'll be Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern is when I'll have it all uploaded, and all the show notes, everything that we have talked about, all the links will be in a Google Doc that'll be in the video description, so you can check that out later, explore to your heart's content. If you want to talk more about this stuff, Nazeris' Discord is always open. My Discord is always open. By all means, if you find other information that connects well into this that you think would be good to add to the show notes, hit us up. Drop us a ping, send us links. We're always looking for more information to better communicate this sort of stuff and to help other people better understand what CIG is working towards, and to manage expectations, and to be better informed citizens. Not like U.S. citizens, UK citizens, but star citizens, because we all have a vested interest.
But they all have the same problem. None of them.
Yeah. So, because there are still 30 some odd of you hanging out in chat, and we really appreciate the support and all you guys hanging out and being a part of the conversation, we need to find someone to raid.
I have two people, Smithy Joe Bob streaming, doing some Overdrive maybe.
Smithy, or we'll do Smithy Joe Bob as 5 people hanging out in chat. Oh, what's it?
About 2 years ago, I realized that.
Oh.
What?
Oh, I clicked on the thing and it went right into an ad. Let's see. Dog food.
Dog food. That's nice. Nice.
Yep. We will raid Smiffy Joe Bob. Go show Smiffy Joe Bob some support. Send them some love. Thank you so much for hanging out. Thank you for the new people coming in, being a part of the stream and being
make sure
active in chat.
Make sure
hanging out with us.
Sorry. Make sure to tell Smiffy that low flying is amazing.
All right. 07 guys, have a good night. Thanks so much. Cheers.
Bye.